Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Edwin Valero. Edwin Valero was born on December 3, 1981, in Bolero Alto, Mérida, Venezuela. He was one of 5 children in the family. Edwin's father worked as a truck driver and was often away from home for days at a time. When Edwin was 7, his father abandoned the family completely, which had a significant impact on Edwin. His mother, who was left to raise the children alone, made life very difficult for them. She later entered a new relationship and had 3 more children. Edwin did not enjoy studying and dropped out of school at the age of 11, despite his mother always emphasizing the importance of education. Eventually, the family moved to a new neighborhood, where Edwin began helping his mother by selling fruit. In his spare time, he enjoyed practicing taekwondo, but the need to earn money limited his practice. One day, he won a basketball and a baseball photo album, which he traded for a bicycle. He then used the bicycle to sell ice cream and visit his siblings. Edwin learned to repair bicycles, and his mother helped him find an evening job repairing them. There, he worked with a former boxer who shared fascinating stories about boxing, sparking Edwin's growing interest in the sport. One evening in 1992, while working as a garlic delivery man, Edwin came across a gym named after the famous boxer who had won an Olympic gold medal. Edwin was fascinated by boxing and caught the attention of the trainer, who invited him to try boxing. Edwin was interested, but worried that he would leave his bag of garlic unattended while he worked. The coach encouraged him to come back the next day at 2 p.m., wearing shorts and sneakers. When Edwin returned, the coach assessed his skills and recognized his determination and discipline. Although his family did not approve of boxing, Edwin worked hard at the gym, diligently following the coach's instructions and training until he was exhausted. With each punch, he put in more effort, and the coach noticed that Edwin's punches were surprisingly powerful for a 12-year-old, reflecting his struggle and ambition to succeed. When Edwin turned 13, he asked his coach if he could stay overnight at the gym, and the coach agreed. Understanding Edwin's difficult circumstances, this decision marked the beginning of Edwin's childhood filled with boxing gloves, punching bags, and dreams of becoming a world champion. He trained hard, but over time, he faced some challenges. He started drinking, using drugs, and hanging out with bad influences. Despite these difficulties, he participated in 92 amateur boxing matches, winning 86 and scoring 45 knockouts, losing only 6. In 1998, he became the champion of Central America and the Caribbean islands. During this time, he met Jennifer Carolina Vieira de Valero, who would later become his wife. Jennifer's parents initially disapproved of their relationship, believing that Edwin had no bright future. In February 2001, Edwin's life took a tragic turn. While riding his motorcycle without a helmet and speeding to help his father, who had just had an accident, he crashed into a car. He fell off his motorcycle and hit his head on the pavement, suffering a brain injury. A blood clot formed in his head and was later removed. Medical reports indicated that the injury affected the nerves in his brain, resulting in slower reflexes, leading many to believe that his boxing career was over. Edwin spent 3 months in the hospital, with Jennifer by his side throughout his recovery. They fell in love at first sight, and no one could have predicted how tragic their love story would turn out to be. On January 7, 2002, Edwin returned to the boxing ring despite being advised not to fight again. He won the match by knocking out his opponent, proving his doubters wrong. On June 30, 2002, Jennifer gave birth to their first child when she was 15 years old. They faced difficulties getting married because they needed her parents' permission. However, Jennifer officially became his wife on October 8 of that same year. Edwin began his professional boxing career and quickly became famous. In his fights, he knocked out all his opponents in the first rounds, which attracted national attention. However, over time, he fell into bad habits, including drug and alcohol addiction. Despite these difficulties, he tried to give back to the community by establishing a foundation for the disabled. He later had a daughter born in California while pursuing new opportunities in the United States. Unfortunately, his situation worsened when one of his trainers began to steal his wages. Edwin learned that his sponsors were not fulfilling their financial commitments. As a result, he decided to return to Venezuela, where he was already a famous figure. His career quickly flourished. He successfully defended his title 4 times, winning each fight and earning millions of dollars, which motivated him to perform even better. He got a tattoo of the Venezuelan flag on his chest, featuring the face of the then president. This connection gave him considerable influence in the government, and he developed a friendship with the president. Edwin was known to be kind, polite, and friendly. However, when he drank, his attitude changed dramatically, becoming cruel and aggressive. The only person who truly understood him was his wife. Over time, his family began to notice unusual changes in his behavior and questioned him about possible drug use. Edwin changed daily, and these changes were quite obvious. Despite their attempts to help, Edwin became increasingly distant from his family. In September 2007, Edwin's mother and sister reported him for domestic violence after he assaulted them during a family argument. They also accused him of abusing his wife. This information emerged on April 4, 2009, when the International Boxing Association announced a new lightweight champion. On April 15, 2009, Valera attacked his wife Jennifer in the leg while drunk. He claimed it was an accident, but his family believed it was intentional. Edwin was involved in many serious incidents, but often escaped punishment because of his wealth and fame. He avoided responsibility due to his status as one of the top boxers of his time, and there were fears that he might be exploiting his connections in the government. He even killed a thief who stole his motorbike, but the case was settled with money. In 2010, Jennifer and Edwin's 2 children contacted his mother when his behavior became out of control. He spent days isolating himself, drinking and using drugs, and pressuring Jennifer to participate in these activities. Edwin was then taken to a clinic in Caracas for rehabilitation. Specialists prescribed medication and injections, but Edwin did not follow the instructions. On March 25, 2010, he threatened hospital staff because they were treating his wife, Jennifer, who had been admitted with bruises and a punctured lung due to broken ribs. Jennifer accidentally fell from a height of 3 meters while checking a non-functioning water tank. After the fall, she went to bed, but the pain in her back became unbearable. When she woke up, she informed her family, who took her to the hospital. However, doctors quickly suspected that she had been assaulted. The medical staff informed the police of their suspicions, and Edwin threatened to harm them if the news reached the media. He also threatened his wife, which eventually led to his arrest. The judge issued protective orders for Jennifer, preventing Edwin from approaching or threatening her. He was also not allowed near the hospital while his wife was there. Hospital staff were given additional protection. The judge ordered Edwin to attend rehabilitation at the hospital. On April 5, Jennifer was discharged and told the police that he had not abused her. On April 8, 2010, Edwin was released on bail. The unfortunate event occurred when Edwin and his wife traveled to the state of Bolívar in Venezuela. During the trip, Edwin noticed that a car was following them from the moment they left their home. When he reached the checkpoint, he sought help, fearing that someone might be trying to harm him. Edwin called a friend for protection during the trip, but the friend suggested that he stay overnight in Valencia because it was getting late. On April 17, 2010, at 11:30 p.m., Edwin and Jennifer arrived at a hotel in Valencia, Carabobo. They were seen chatting happily in the hotel lobby. To pay for his stay, Edwin withdrew some cash to exchange for local currency. Before returning to his room, He asked the staff to carefully check to make sure no one was following him. Despite checking the room, he requested a quieter room. At 5:30 a.m., Edwin walked barefoot to the hotel lobby and informed the staff that his wife was dead. He initially appeared calm, which led the staff to doubt his account until they checked the room. They then contacted the Carabobo State Police, and Edwin was arrested shortly thereafter. There were no signs of a struggle or fight in the room. Jennifer was found lying on a carpet. She had 3 stab wounds to her neck, but there were no signs of a struggle. There were beer cans and bottles next to her body. Additional bloodstains were found under the chair and in the bathroom, where a freshly laundered white towel was found. It is important to note that no knife or similar object was found that could have caused the injuries. After the room was examined, Jennifer's body was taken to the morgue for an autopsy. Edwin called his parents-in-law to inform them of their daughter's death, saying that she had been killed by hitmen who were chasing them. He then ended the call. The police spoke to Edwin to learn more about the case. In his initial statement, Edwin explained that he had slept with his wife after drinking heavily and using drugs. When he woke up, he found blood on his body and saw his wife's body lying next to him. He did not remember what had happened and was initially afraid that he had killed her. Confused, he went downstairs to report the incident, unsure if he was the culprit. He also told the police that they had been followed since leaving Bolero Alto Merida, Venezuela, suggesting that someone might have entered their hotel room and killed her. However, there were many inconsistencies in his testimony. That evening, Edwin's manager went to the police station to see him. Edwin expressed concern for his children and asked the manager to retrieve a suitcase containing $92,000 that the police had confiscated. While things seemed calm earlier that night, at around 1:30 a.m., on April 19, 2010, an inmate in a nearby cell heard a noise coming from Edwin's cell. He reported this to the police, who responded quickly and found Edwin dead. There was a white object stuck in his mouth, which was a photo of his wife and children. His body was then taken to the morgue. By 4 a.m., Edwin's family had been notified, and they went to the morgue. His sister mustered up the courage to view his body. On the metal plate, she saw a bruise on the back of his head, but there was no mark on his neck. There were also bruises on various parts of his body. The news of the incident was reported in the media, but few believed it to be true. Even his family insisted that he would never end his life because he was afraid of death. There was no sign of strangulation, which raised many questions. When Edwin entered prison, he was wearing black sweatpants and a black t-shirt with red stripes, along with an orange striped cap. But the media reported that he was wearing jeans. The police later explained that Edwin was allowed to shower and change his clothes. Rumors began to spread that Edwin's death was staged. Some even claimed that the body in the coffin was a wax figure and that Edwin had actually been taken to Cuba. Additionally, a suitcase of Edwin's money disappeared without a trace, adding to the mystery. Overall, the circumstances surrounding Edwin's death remain puzzling, with many indications that it may have been staged. One unresolved issue is the absence of a murder weapon. There were no signs of a struggle or bruises on Jennifer's body, which raises further questions about the circumstances of the incident. Furthermore, it was observed that the wound was not deep enough to cause immediate death. Another oddity is that the hotel security camera footage was never reviewed to determine if anyone entered the couple's room that night. Both deaths remain unclear. Police found Edwin's clothes in the hotel room, but only Jennifer's clothes were found in the car. Edwin's mother testified that she had placed his suitcases in the trunk, including one containing $92,000 that her son was supposed to take to Cuba. Reports say Edwin packed only 2 suitcases, a pink suitcase containing money and a brown suitcase containing clothes. However, photos from the crime scene only showed the brown suitcase, while the pink suitcase was missing. Police stated that they did not know where it was. Just hours before leaving Merida, Edwin bought a blue Toyota, traded in his Toyota Camry, and handed over a check for 60,000 bolivars, with the rest in dollars. It is claimed that the man who sold Edwin the car noticed that the suitcase was full of cash, which has led to speculation that he may have followed Edwin to Valencia. The complex case raises numerous questions. It is unclear who killed Edwin's wife and what the motive was. Edwin's family, concerned about the circumstances of his death, has sought further investigation. On May 13, 2010, at 9 a.m., Edwin's body was exhumed in the presence of Merida police, the National Guard, court officials, and representatives from the prosecutor's office. A mobile laboratory arrived at the scene shortly thereafter. 3 hours after the exhumation, specimens were collected and sent to the forensic department for analysis, which was expected to take 15 days. However, the results were not received until 2014, revealing that Edwin had been given a substance that caused his lungs to explode. Meanwhile, Jennifer's cause of death remains unresolved. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jennifer Schuett. Jennifer Schuett was an 8-year-old girl who had just finished school for the day. She lived with her single mother, Elaine, who worked hard to ensure that her daughter was happy and well taken care of. Elaine juggled multiple jobs to support their family and give Jennifer a joyful childhood. With all the love and attention she received, Jennifer grew into a bright and cheerful child, showing a strong enthusiasm for learning and a natural curiosity at such a young age. Jennifer mentioned that children often fear the dark, and she was no different. She admitted that she was afraid of the dark and often slept in the same room as her mother. She recalled that from what she could remember about her childhood, she just didn't like the dark or sleeping alone, and so she felt comforted by going to bed with her mom. She stated that it was just the two of them, and they relied on each other. That night, on August 9, 2009, Jennifer and her mother, Elaine, shared a room. Jennifer was restless, tossing and turning and occasionally kicking her mom, which made it hard for Elaine to fall asleep. At 2:30 a.m., Elaine woke up and asked Jennifer to return to her own room since she had to get up early for work. In response, Jennifer said, "Mom, I love you, so I'm going to sleep in my own room tonight," and went back to her room. Elaine would later deeply regret this decision, but at that moment, she had no way of knowing what would happen next. The next morning, Elaine found that Jennifer was missing when she went to wake her up. She saw that the window facing the parking lot was wide open. Elaine quickly called 911. When the police arrived, she explained that she hadn't heard any sounds or screams after Jennifer went to her room. It's important to note that their apartment was on the first floor, and Jennifer's windows overlooked the parking lot. This made Elaine worry that someone might have seen Jennifer and entered her room through the window. Elaine understood that their apartment wasn't the best place for her and her young daughter, but it was all they could afford at that time. However, Elaine's parents stepped in to assist her and their granddaughter by buying a small house nearby and renovating it. Jennifer and her mother were set to move into the new house in a few months. The day before Jennifer went missing, they had been working in the garden there, where Jennifer had been bitten by mosquitoes, making it difficult for her to sleep peacefully that night. After her daughter went missing, Elaine was heartbroken. She expressed that Jennifer was her only child and begged for her safe return. The police dedicated themselves to finding her. Fortunately, Elaine received news sooner than expected. Later that day, around 6:30 p.m., the police got a call from parents whose children were playing in a field and discovered something alarming. To their shock, they realized it was a young girl. When the police arrived at the scene, they found 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett's body in the middle of the field, 5 kilometers from her home. Jennifer was in a serious condition, but she was still breathing. She had a deep cut across her throat. The most life-threatening injury was this wound, which led to significant blood loss and left her very pale and weak. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, where doctors worked hard to save her life. One doctor recalled that when he first saw Jennifer in the emergency room, she was a fairly small 8-year-old, very pale, and covered with ant bites and scratches on her back. He mentioned that she couldn't make any sounds because of the injury to her neck. Fortunately, he added that after the operation, Jennifer's condition stabilized and the bleeding stopped. He stated that they had completed her surgery, her airway was stable, and she wasn't bleeding, so they were very hopeful about her survival. When she regained consciousness after the surgery, her behavior underwent a sudden change. It turned out that she was afraid of all men. She later recounted that she had been kind of a hard patient to deal with because she had a lot of male doctors, and she was scared of males. Additionally, the Dickinson Police Department deployed a whole team to guard her hospital room. Throughout this time, Jennifer was in a constant state of panic. She even hit a doctor in the stomach when he tried to approach her. Elaine tried to comfort her daughter by explaining that everyone present was there to help her. Despite this, Jennifer remained distrustful of those around her. Her behavior became clearer when she disclosed what had happened to her that night. An investigator noted that they knew they had a survivor who couldn't speak and that the challenge was getting information from her. After all, she was only 8 years old, so it was tough. Because Jennifer was too scared to speak directly to the investigator, the detectives provided her with a notebook and pens. They asked her to write down her answers to their questions. Jennifer communicated through notes to her mother, who then relayed the note to the officer. Surprisingly, her written responses were very detailed and accurately described the events. Despite her young age, Jennifer demonstrated impressive intelligence. According to the note, that night, Jennifer entered her room, turned on the light, and picked up a book to read, hoping it would make her sleepy. It worked, and she soon fell asleep. Suddenly, she woke up to find the stranger carrying her out of the house. She said that he was running with her down the sidewalk and that she tried to scream, but he covered her nose and mouth. Afterward, he put her in a car and identified himself as an undercover police officer. Immediately, Jennifer felt that something was off, as she noticed her mother's car in the parking lot, which left her puzzled about their destination. While she understood that police are generally trusted, her mother had always warned her not to trust strangers. Jennifer recalled that as a child, she had wanted to believe the stranger, but the lessons she had learned about strangers in school, along with her fear of the dark, told her that something was seriously wrong. When they passed her grandparents' house, Jennifer suggested that he could drop her off there, but he replied that he couldn't because they were not home. At that moment, she realized that he was lying since their car was parked in the driveway. The man had stopped near Jennifer's school, which was about 3 kilometers from her house. He had told her to watch the moon closely and said that when it changed color, her mother would arrive to pick her up. Jennifer recalled waiting anxiously for her mother's headlights, but they never appeared. At that moment, she sensed that the man was mentally preparing himself for his true intentions. After 5 minutes, the stranger remarked that her mom wasn't coming, so they needed to go farther. He then drove a few more blocks to a dead-end street and stopped the car. Jennifer once again sought confirmation that he was a genuine policeman. She mentioned that she was questioning him and needed him to prove he was an officer. She asked him where his gun and badge were. He responded that his gun was in the back seat of the car. As Jennifer turned to look for it, the suspicious officer removed her underwear. Jennifer lost track of time while in the stranger's grip because she passed out. She only became aware of her surroundings again when he was pulling her by her ankles through the field. Despite the intense pain caused by twigs and stones pressing into her back, she acted as if she were dead and remained silent, knowing that this was her opportunity to survive. He eventually released her feet and left her alone in the field. Jennifer heard him walking away, followed by the sound of his car door slamming and the engine starting as he drove off. She realized that she couldn't scream and didn't understand why. She managed to place her right hand on her neck and felt a deep wound. Looking at her hand, she saw it covered in blood. Since the exact time of her disappearance was unknown, it was thought that she lay in the field for 12 to 14 hours. As the sun set, she noticed the lights of passing cars nearby. She heard children's voices and a dog that approached her several times, seemingly trying to get its owner's attention, but the owner never came. During this time, she was bitten by fire ants, which helped her stay awake. Jennifer stated that every time she regained consciousness, she was shocked that she was still alive. She said she wasn't afraid and had accepted that she might not survive. Suddenly, she heard children's voices nearby, and then something hit her leg. When Jennifer next regained consciousness, she heard a police officer saying, "You've been found. You're going to be okay. Just please stay with me." She remembered being loaded into the life flight helicopter. This experience was very difficult for young Jennifer because she couldn't speak and had to communicate by writing everything down. Her fear of men added to the tension, so her mother asked the questions, and Jennifer's responses were passed on to the officers outside the door. Remarkably, 8-year-old Jennifer was able to get the stranger's name. "I just remember recalling his name, so I wrote that he said his name was Dennis. I remember thinking he looked greasy and that he might have had a scar or something on his face." For days after Jennifer went missing, the police enlisted the help of forensic expert Lois Gibson. She communicated with Jennifer using gestures and notes. Despite these difficulties, they created a detailed composite sketch of a man, which was released to the public in hopes of receiving information. While this was happening, police searched the crime scene and discovered Jennifer's clothing about half a mile away, along with a man's shirt and underwear. Unfortunately, DNA testing on the clothing did not yield any matches to a suspect. Jennifer's recovery took time, but she demonstrated incredible strength for someone her age. There was a particularly tough moment when she became upset over a chocolate bar she couldn't eat, screamed in frustration, and made a faint sound. Doctors were surprised because her vocal cords had been nearly severed, and they didn't expect them to heal, yet they started to recover. Soon after, Jennifer was released from the hospital. She returned home and resumed her studies. After finishing school and college, she chose to become a children's librarian. However, she never forgot the traumatic events of that night. Every day felt like a search for her attacker. She wondered if he could be anyone around her. Could it be our new neighbor? Someone at the post office or the grocery store? Is he watching us? Will he come back to finish what he started? Fortunately, Jennifer met a man named Jonathan, and for the first time in years, she felt she could trust someone. They fell in love. Meanwhile, the investigation into her attacker stalled. The chances of finding him diminished as time passed, and the case remained unresolved, moving from one investigator to another without progress. 18 years after that dreadful night, Jennifer received a phone call. She learned that Detective Tim Cromie would be taking over her case and that he wanted to meet with her. Tim Cromie promised to do everything possible to catch the criminal, and Jennifer believed him. He told her that he would do whatever he could in his power until the end of his career to get her the answers she needed for the case. Tim decided to involve FBI Special Agent Richard Renison in the case. Richard had previously worked for the Dickinson, Texas Police Department before joining the FBI. Together, Tim and Richard uncovered a significant amount of evidence collected on the day Jennifer went missing and shortly after she was found. Key pieces of evidence included Jennifer's underwear, as well as the perpetrator's shirt and underwear. They sent a DNA sample found on these items to the lab in Quantico, Virginia. While detectives recognized that DNA analysis technology had improved significantly over the past 19 years, they also knew that the age of the case would make it less of a priority in the lab. Investigating cold cases often comes with the challenge of time, as witnesses forget, people move away, and some may even pass away. However, one advantage of this case's age was the advancements in DNA technology that could aid their investigation. A year later, their efforts were finally recognized. The man whose DNA was discovered at the crime scene was Dennis Earl Bradford, the same name that Jennifer had identified years earlier. Remarkably, the 8-year-old girl had been extremely precise in her descriptions. Despite being on pain medication, unable to speak, and only 8 years old, she wrote down the name Dennis. This was a significant indication of her accuracy. In fact, it later became clear just how precise she was about many details. Dennis Bradford, now 39, lived in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and his DNA had been entered into the national database after he assaulted a woman in a bar in 1996. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison but only served 4. On February 4, 2000, he was conditionally released, and less than a year later, he was arrested for driving under the influence, just half a mile from his home. He remarried and worked as a welder until his arrest in 2009. Tim Cromie and Richard Renison looked into the connection between a suspect from North Little Rock, Arkansas, and Dickinson, Texas, a small town. They discovered that the man had been arrested in Dickinson in 1987, 3 years before Jennifer's attack. At that time, he had 2 addresses located within 2 miles of Jennifer and Elaine's apartment. To verify that he was the kidnapper, detectives requested a 19-year-old photo from his driver's license. When they saw the photo, they were shocked because it resembled the composite sketch made with input from 8-year-old Jennifer. One detective asked if Dennis had ever heard the name Jennifer Shuett, to which he replied affirmatively. The detective then inquired if Dennis had ever had the occasion to come into contact with her, and the suspect again confirmed this. When asked to elaborate, Dennis hesitated, stating that it was a lot to explain, but he believed that if the detective were to see her, he would be extremely proud of her. Finally, and the suspect stated that Jennifer was alive, repeating that she was alive. The detective reacted with disbelief, exclaiming, "Oh God." The suspect responded by saying that the detective had no idea how hard he had prayed for that, mentioning that he was a believer in Christ but had no idea about her status. He added that it was just about 2 days later when he ran away and took off. Dennis Earl Bradford was arrested on October 19, 2009. He claimed he didn't know Jennifer, couldn't remember why he had stopped near her apartment, and didn't understand why he had acted so cruelly towards her. Bradford also shared a significant detail that investigators were unaware of. After the attack, he felt intense guilt. He wanted to pull the trigger but ultimately changed his mind. Following this, he was admitted to a psychiatric ward, which was the same hospital where Jennifer was still receiving treatment at that time. He had been very close to her at that time. Immediately after the interrogation, detectives informed Jennifer that the criminal they had been searching for 19 years had been arrested. Jennifer expressed that when they called her that morning and told her that they had really arrested Dennis Bradford, it was the most moment of her life and meant everything to her. She conveyed her gratitude to the detectives for fulfilling their promise and, above all, wanted to thank Detective Tim Cromie from the Dickinson Police Department and Special Agent Richard Renison from the FBI for all their hard work and dedication over the last year and a half. She emphasized that their promise from day one, never giving up on her case and hearing her voice while seeing her determination, meant a lot to her. Jennifer also admitted her anticipation of facing Dennis Bradford in the courtroom since he was willing to plead guilty and not drag out the trial. Jennifer was given the opportunity to select a court date and chose August 10, the 20th anniversary of the attack. She mentioned that she remembered staying up late, endless nights, trying to perfect her victim impact statement, writing, erasing, and writing again, just trying to perfect what she wanted to say. She said that she had 19 years worth of things to say to that person. However, it was not meant to happen. On May 10, 2010, a few months before the trial, Dennis hung in his jail cell, which made her feel that her right to see the case through to the end had been taken away. Jennifer went to Dennis's grave and read aloud what she wanted to say in court, stating that Dennis Bradford had chosen the wrong little 8-year-old girl to try and murder because for 19 years, she had thought of him every single day and had helped in searching for him. She expressed that in her heart, she knew he was out there, and now she realized that by listening to her heart all those years and never giving up on finding him, she had been right. After finishing her speech, Jennifer turned to her husband and wondered if Dennis had hurt her. At that moment, a fiery ant bit her leg, and she took it as a sign from God that he had heard her loud and clear. Jennifer reflected on her experiences, mentioning that despite the horrific events caused by Dennis's actions, she faced yet another challenge in her life. She explained that as a result of the trauma, she almost lost the ability to conceive a child. However, she noted that amidst the darkness, there were shining examples of kindness, particularly from Dr. Craig Witz, who, after hearing her story, generously offered his services to her twice, free of charge. She shared that at the end of 2012, she and her partner welcomed their daughter Jenna and later their son Jonah, expressing her disbelief by saying that it felt like a dream and questioning who would have thought that they would really be her happy ending. The criminal tried to silence her and take away her right to be a mother, but he failed. Jennifer desires for her story to be shared, not for her own sake, but for others who have endured similar ordeals and must cope with them every day. She mentioned that they have gone through something in life that they can talk about, and she believes it is worth sharing it with others to instill hope. She expressed her hope that this would inspire others to use their voice to help someone else. Jennifer also added that, in the end, she is not a victim but instead victorious. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jennifer Morrissey. Michael was born in Pennsylvania in 1953. He later moved to Williamsport, Maryland. Overall, his childhood was quite normal. After graduating from high school, he went to college and quickly married his girlfriend, whom he had loved for several years. The feeling was mutual, so she readily agreed. Michael is a person who has tried his best to achieve success in his career, he becoming a well-known insurance agent in the city for some time. Though he was good at it, he eventually switched to pharmaceuticals, where his career truly flourished as a pharmaceutical representative. He started his own business and provided his family with a wonderful life. He earned well, and the family wanted for nothing. Unfortunately, his happy married life did not last long. For years after the birth of their children, Michael and his wife's relationship became cold, so they decided to divorce. Despite the divorce, but he and his wife remain on good terms, and the children still visit him regularly. The son and daughter later recalled that even during the divorce proceedings, they never saw their parents argue. Their relationship remained peaceful and respectful, even as they decided to end their marriage. A few years later, Michael moved to Bucks County, Pennsylvania, to start a new life. He plans to continue his business there until he retires. As a single man, Michael enjoyed his freedom and owned a large, beautiful house by the river. He developed an interest in art and began collecting valuable pieces. Although he didn't aim for world-class masterpieces, he has gathered a fascinating collection that he is very proud of. Michael remained a bachelor for a long time until 2012, when he met a 28-year-old single mother named Jennifer Morrissey. They quickly fell in love and moved into a more intimate relationship. The romance was intense and passionate. Soon, Michael invited Jennifer on a vacation to the Caribbean islands. On the trip, he brought 2 jet skis and 2 ATVs so that both could participate in the activities. He was deeply infatuated with Jennifer, and his relatives were amazed at how much he had changed. He even got his first tattoo in his life, dedicated to Jennifer. In 2015, after they had been dating for 3 years, Michael invited Jennifer to move into his house, and she agreed. He gave her everything, including a comfortable life. Jennifer's stepchild even has his own room. However, the idyll lasted until August 8th of that year, when Michael was found dead in his house. By this time, his relationship with Jennifer had been going on for 3 years, and they were planning a wedding. Earlier, colleagues found Michael lifeless in his home. They initially thought he might have died from a heart attack. When the rescue team arrived, they discovered he's sitting in a chair with his head tilted back. From behind, he appeared to be sleeping, but closer inspection revealed a pool of blood beneath him, with blood streaks around his mouth, nose, and chest. It became clear that he had not died from a heart attack but from gunshot wounds to the face. The wound between his eyes suggested that it was either murder or intentionally ended his life. Forensic experts began analyzing the scene and quickly ruled out intentionally ended his life. If he had shot himself, the gun would have fallen to the floor or at his feet, but the gun was missing. This indicated someone else was present at the time of his death, who pulled the trigger. Forensic experts expanded the search area and examined the living room. A .380 caliber cartridge case was found about 10 meters from Michael. There were no signs of a struggle inside the house, perhaps because the killer suddenly attacked him and acted abruptly. In addition, the watch, a laptop, and a cell phone of Michael's were also lost, indicating a robbery. It appears he witnessed a break-in, prompting the attacker to kill him to silence him. Further clues were found in Michael's bedroom. Investigators learned that he owned 2 registered guns. However, only one gun was found, and the holster for his Smith & Wesson .38 was empty. It was confirmed that he was shot with this missing gun. He had kept the gun for self-defense, indicating the perpetrator likely knew its location. There were no signs of a struggle, no injuries on Michael. This suggests the criminal knew the house, the location of the weapon, and how to escape unnoticed. As a result, investigators began testing people who had close contact with Michael to identify the suspect. The robbery theory quickly to unravel. Although Michael's pockets were empty, along with his cell phone, laptop, and watch were all lost, but other valuable objects remained intact. These valuable objects are highly visible, include his art collection, which featured some valuable pieces. Notably, each painting in his collection was lit up. The intruder didn't come to the house to rob but specifically to kill. Several items were taken to create a fake scene of a robbery, in order to mislead the investigation. One important piece of information is the disappearance of information storage devices, such as mobile phones and laptops, likely containing important, suggesting this was not accidental. The house was not broken into, the doors and windows are still intact. This suggests that either the perpetrator had access to the house or Michael let them in, likely because he trusted them. Upon investigating his recent life, the police found he had no known enemies. He had been in a long-term relationship with a woman named Jennifer Morrissey, who was 33 years old. Some neighbors noted that she was the fiancée of he. However, she had vanished without a trace, which seemed very suspicious. Neighbors described Jennifer as a rather private person who did not like to talk about herself or her past. It was known that she had conflicts with her mother. Jennifer recounted her difficult childhood living in her mother's house, and she had been abused a lot. She accused 2 men of repeatedly raping her during her teenage years. However, her mother did not believe it. So, she eventually dropped out of school and left home. She recalls this period as a difficult one, and she suffered from severe depression. After leaving home, Jennifer had to support herself, so she found work as a mechanic. She also bought a sporty motorcycle and enjoyed riding around the city in her free time. On social media, she often boasted about speeding on night roads, indicating her love for danger. She also was a thrill seeker and expressed some of her ideals through her tattoos, which included several words across her chest and biceps, as well as a grinning skull on her arm. Jennifer became a mother at 20. The child's biological father quickly abandoned them, so she worked hard to secure her child's future. Besides her mechanic job, she also worked as a dancer at a nightclub in Pennsylvania. It was there in 2012 that she met Michael McNew, a 59-year-old regular at the club. During one visit, they struck up a conversation, and he invited her to dinner. Jennifer agreed to the date on the condition that he pay her $1,200 electricity bill. They began frequently visiting upscale restaurants and expensive places. Michael showered her with lavish gifts, including jewelry, a motorcycle, and a car, and he also took her on trips. Jennifer started referring to him as her sugar daddy, and he was happy to support a beautiful young woman. Jennifer's life is quite difficult, so it's not surprising that she saw Michael as a chance to improve things she had been unable to for years. She felt that Michael not only brought her the opportunity to get rich, but also brought her the respect and understanding she had never experienced in her life. They started dating in 2015, and their relationship deepened when they moved in together. Initially, their relationship seemed strong, but over time, it began to decline. Neighbors reported a major conflict happened a few months before Michael passed away. Some witnessed an intense argument, after which Michael and Jennifer allegedly separated. However, they continued living together even though their relationship has deteriorated greatly. Jennifer vanished shortly after the tragedy, and it appeared intentional. At that time, Jennifer was not considered a suspect. The police chose to reach out to Michael's children. They couldn't accept that their father had passed away. As soon as they learned what had happened to their father, they immediately packed their things. Michael's son, Patrick, traveled from Pittsburgh, while his sister and their mother traveled from Maryland. They all met and headed to Michael's home. Patrick told investigators that he never took his father's relationship with stripper Jennifer seriously. He thought Jennifer was too rude, brazen, and greedy, so he didn't want his father to have a long-term relationship with her. Michael's relatives and many friends tried to persuade him to end the relationship for fear she might endanger. In June 2016, Michael's daughter, Katie, got married. She told her father that she did not want Jennifer to attend her upcoming wedding. Michael decided to skip this event, so the wedding happened without the bride's father. Despite his relatives' objections, Michael continued to date Jennifer. Michael even made her the beneficiary of 2 life insurance policies worth about $500,000. By then, everyone knew Jennifer was frequently using illegal substances, exploiting Michael, and possibly having an affair. She severely damaged the relationship between Michael and Patrick, leading to frequent conflicts between them. Many believe that she did this on purpose so that she could gain access to all of Michael's assets, a wealthy man. However, in 2017, new issues emerged when she started distancing herself from he. She would leave without notice, came home late at night and just went to sleep without explaining anything. It was obvious that she was not really interested in the relationship anymore. During this time, she began using more illegal substances during this time, resulting in a serious addiction. She was arrested several times. Twice for substance abuse and once for causing an accident. A year before the tragic incident, Jennifer had cut off a cyclist with her car. Despite these issues, Michael stood by her. He helped pay all the fines and legal costs, making monthly payments for 2 cases filed against her, amounting to about $4,000 in total. According to Michael's children, shortly before his death, he mentioned his intention to break up with Jennifer and cancel their wedding plans. For Jennifer, this means she will lose everything, including a life of luxury that he has given her. She had to manage on her own and didn't have much money. She would also lose the large house and access to all the luxuries he had provided. The children of Michael, Patrick, and Katie believed that money was the motive for the murder. Jennifer simply lost control of herself as she found herself facing the possibility of losing everything. Michael had died 24 to 48 hours before his colleagues found him. The cause of his death was a gunshot to the face, fired at very close range. The bullet impacted the facial bone, fragmented, and split into two parts. One of them reached the brain, causing instant death. The police had to mobilize all resources and seize every opportunity to capture Jennifer and interrogate her, as she was the prime suspect. She was known to be on probation due to an accident. The police hoped she would come to the department to check in with the inspector, and as they anticipated, she did. On August 10th, 4 days after Michael's death, Jennifer unexpectedly arrived at the police station to pay court costs. She also reported to the police that she had seen on the news that her lover, Michael, had been killed, which surprised her greatly. The dispatcher then informed the detectives leading the investigation about this. It seemed odd because news of the crime had appeared on TV and social media almost immediately after the murder. Why did Jennifer wait 4 days to contact the police? The detectives reached out to Jennifer and arranged to meet her at the station the next day. They didn't reveal that she was a suspect in the murder but said they wanted to ask a few questions about a T-shirt. Meanwhile, they requested a warrant to examine her communications. However, Jennifer sensed something was amiss and didn't show up for the meet. Instead, she disappeared for several days. From experience, the detectives knew that this behavior was typical of criminals who are buying time. During such periods, they often fabricate an alibi or attempt to hide. Meanwhile, the police continued gathering evidence against Jennifer's. To learn more, the investigators spoke to multiple friends of Michael. One friend revealed that shortly before the crime, Michael had called him, expressing fear for life. Michael had discovered the identity of Jennifer's boyfriend, a man known by the alias Ruthless. According to Michael, this man was extremely dangerous. The situation was spiraling out of control, and Michael intended to break off his engagement quickly to protect himself. The man using the alias Ruthless was actually Charles Culo, a notorious figure in criminal circles who had been imprisoned several times. He had committed a string of serious offenses, with most charges related to the distribution of illegal substances. Just days before Michael's death, Charles was released from custody. Jennifer quickly moved in with Charles, but many of her belongings were still at Michael's house. She would occasionally stop by to collect her things, and Michael threatened to give them away to avoid seeing her again. Michael's friend mentioned that he was unhappy about Jennifer's affair. However, Michael chose not to compete with people from the criminal world and decided to end the relationship. The police believed this was a pivotal moment in the investigation. They had a new prime suspect, Charles, who would not have hesitated to shoot a defenseless elderly man. It was suspected that Charles accompanied her to Michael's house. And Charles and Jennifer simply wanted to make a profit, so they killed Michael so they wouldn't be hindered. Meanwhile, Jennifer missed a scheduled check-in with the inspector, which allowed the police to detain her and bring her to justice. On August 25, 2017, police officers went to the motorcycle repair shop where Jennifer worked and arrested her for violating her probation. Later, one of Jennifer's cellmates reported that she behaved very suspiciously during her imprisonment and confessed to intentionally killing Michael. The investigators brought Jennifer's in for questioning and informed her that she was suspected of being involved in the murder. She chose not to answer their questions and instead hired a lawyer. Meanwhile, a warrant was issued to access the communication devices of Jennifer. Jennifer's phone was found at the crime scene at 9:45 p.m. during her correspondence with Michael, confirming she was present at the time of the murder. Afterward, her phone's geolocation showed she traveled about 20 kilometers south to Charles's trailer, arriving there around 11 p.m. Michael's phone remained at the house until about 1 a.m. before moving towards the river, where it stopped working, likely after being thrown into the water. If Jennifer had already left the scene, who took the phone? An electronics expert discovered that Jennifer's phone automatically connected to Michael's Wi-Fi network at about 9:45 p.m. on August 6, 2017, when the murder occurred. This suggests she was very close to the router at that time. The police continued their investigation and discovered that Jennifer had a second mobile phone. They accessed this device, which actually belonged to Michael and was password protected. There was a risk of being unable to unlock it, but thanks to a list of passwords found on Michael's computer, used by Jennifer, they successfully unlocked the phone. This action uncovered significant evidence. The investigation revealed that shortly before his death, Michael was communicating with Jennifer. While she had deleted much of the information, detectives were able to recover it. Michael intended to contact the FBI to ensure Charles was imprisoned for life. Naturally, Charles could not allow this, so investigators believe he chose to kill Michael. Although Charles's phone was examined, he didn't appear to take these threats seriously. Jennifer, however, reacted more aggressively. Michael indicated he was willing to abandon his plan to contact the FBI if Jennifer returned to him and left Charles. The last message Michael sent before his death was "I love you," to which Jennifer did not respond. After accessing Michael's social media accounts, it was discovered that the day after his death, Jennifer began sharing various stories about the incident with her friends and acquaintances. Jennifer recounted many different stories to everyone. She told some that he had been attacked, but she told some other people that she didn't know what happened because they broke up a long time ago. She did this to spread misinformation and cover her tracks. It was obvious that she and Charles were involved in the murder. Eventually, the detective spoke with Charles, and he confessed. According to him, he was not involved in Michael's death. The murder was committed by Jennifer. That day, Jennifer returned to him late in the evening and admitted she had killed Michael. She explained that after an unpleasant conversation, Michael approached her with a gun. She managed to take the gun from him, but it accidentally fired, killing him. Frightened, she left immediately afterward. Jennifer requested to return to Michael to ensure he was either dead or to administer first aid if he was still alive. However, Charles refused to be involved in the crime, so he asked his friend Jerry to take Jennifer to the victim. Jerry, who lived nearby in a trailer with his mother, cooperated with the investigation and confirmed that he drove Jennifer to the river house that evening. He wasn't initially told the reason, but once they arrived, he realized what was happening. It was noted that the crime scene did not resemble a place where a fight had occurred, as Jennifer had claimed, but rather an execution. Michael was sitting in his chair when Jennifer arrived, and she neither checked his pulse nor attempted to help him. Instead, Jennifer collected valuables, removing the watch from his wrist, taking his laptop, and tossing his mobile phone into the river. Jerry then drove her to Charles's trailer. The police discovered traces of she DNA in Michael's pockets, which she had searched. Charles defended himself by explaining that he was not at Michael's house because he had been in an accident shortly before the murder, which left him with serious injuries. At the time, he was using a wheelchair to move around, could barely walk, and was in no condition to commit the crime. Furthermore, he was aware that he needed to avoid any trouble while on probation. Charles was very convincing, and the investigators believed him. They verified his story, confirming that he was indeed recovering from the accident. On September 29, 2017, Jennifer Morrissey was charged with first-degree murder, robbery, and tampering with evidence. The trial was set for January 24, 2019. The prosecutor stated that these charges were linked to several conflicts before the attack. Jennifer felt most upset because Michael did not want to continue funding her lifestyle and left her, which further aggravated her. Additionally, Michael's death was supposed to bring financial gain, as Jennifer claimed an insurance payout of about $500,000. The crucial evidence against Jennifer came from Jerry, a friend of Charles, who testified at the trial. Jerry confirmed that Jennifer returned to the crime scene to eliminate evidence. Due to his cooperation, he was not charged. Likewise, Jennifer's boyfriend Charles was not charged because he also testified against her, even though he initially protected her, delayed contacting the police, and destroyed the murder weapon. Inmates also testified against Jennifer during the trial. The defense argued that Jennifer was not cruel and could not be accused of being vindictive or aggressive. To support this claim, Jennifer chose to testify herself. During the trial, she claimed she went to Michael's house in the evening to collect her belongings. He allegedly met her at the door with a gun, refused her entry, and aimed the gun at her. She said she reacted quickly, a struggle followed, and during the struggle, the gun accidentally went off, shooting he in the face. Jennifer maintained it was an act of self-defense, insisting that if she hadn't shot him, he might have shot her. However, her story didn't align with the fact that Michael was found shot while sitting in a chair, suggesting he wasn't at the door as she claimed. This made her account seem unbelievable. Forensic experts concluded that the most likely scenario was intentional murder. Evidence showed that the gun was about 3 meters from Michael's head when it was fired. Jennifer had aimed precisely between his eyes to kill him swiftly, execution style. There was no evidence of a struggle between them. On February 1, 2019, the jury convened to deliberate a verdict. Jennifer Morrissey was found guilty of first-degree murder, theft, and tampering with evidence. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, she never showed remorse. Michael's son was the most affected during the trial investigations. He repeatedly expressed his hatred towards Jennifer because she took his father away from him. Because of Jennifer, the relationship between him and his father has greatly deteriorated, and now they can no longer be reconciled. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sarah Starr. On November 27, 2017, at approximately 9 a.m., the Sherry County Sheriff's Department in Alabama, United States, received a call from a witness who believed her friend had taken her own life. Police were dispatched to a home owned by a local church. The home had previously been the pastor's residence but had recently been rented out exclusively to church members. The tenant at the time of the incident was Sarah Starr, a recently divorced mother of 3. At 38, she had been married for 16 years, but her relationship had hit a rough patch, leading her to make the difficult decision to divorce. Sarah was at a turning point in her life, facing the challenges of being a single parent without her husband's support. She had to take on all parental responsibilities, including providing for the needs of the children since her husband did not help at first. However, without her husband constantly pressuring her, her situation seemed to improve. Life became easier for her. Sarah Starr was born in 1979 in the small town of LBI, Kansas, USA. She is a doting mother. She easily manages and cares for her children. She is a teacher at a local elementary school where she teaches literature. Sarah loves her job. People describe her as knowledgeable and calm, with the ability to engage and inspire students. Sarah's marriage to Jason began in February 2001 when she was 22 years old and had just graduated with a bachelor's degree in education. Jason, who was 28, had recently returned from military service. He had previously been married and had a son, but after facing disagreements with his first wife, they divorced. He was immediately drawn to Sarah's kindness and beauty. Initially, their marriage seemed stable and happy, and Sarah often shared how well things were going. However, there were growing concerns among friends and family about Jason's behavior. Many noticed that he would frequently insult and humiliate her in public. After 5 years of marriage, the couple had twins, then another set of twins, which was quite a rare event. She was overjoyed to become a mother of 4, but Jason was unhappy. The couple lived in a small town of Colby, Kansas, where they grew up, but they decided to move to Alabama. They rented a house in their new home and Jason found a job. In addition to his main job, he started a business. Meanwhile, Sarah became a stay-at-home mother, taking care of 4 young children and managing household chores. It was a lot of work, but she did it well. However, Jason's income was not enough, so Sarah took on a part-time job at a school. This increased her workload while her husband did not provide much support. Sarah found a strong community of believers and became an active member of her local Baptist church. Her easygoing, outgoing personality helped her settle into her new environment. In 2016, she became a 4th-grade teacher at a nearby elementary school. People described her as a very positive and friendly woman. However, behind her cheerful exterior, she faced difficulties, especially after she gave birth to her second set of twins. Jason felt overwhelmed. He often lost his temper with Sarah because of the noise from the children, lack of sleep, and the mess they made. Sarah admitted that she was exhausted by this marriage. She decided to divorce and moved into a house provided by the church for a small fee and began the divorce process. Because of Jason's business, along with the division of assets and child custody, the divorce process could drag on for years. Fortunately, she had the support of her church, which helped her through the difficult times. Although Sarah was a devoted mother and managed her responsibilities well, the ongoing hardships took a toll on her mental health. She became increasingly anxious, frequently arguing with her husband, with Jason saying that Sarah focused on spending his money on unnecessary items and was addicted to shopping. This behavior worsened after their divorce, leading to significant financial difficulties. These made it difficult for her to sleep and she suffered from mild depression. When Sarah decided to move out of the house she shared with Jason, she asked her friends, Dana and Lawrence, a married couple, for help. They later remembered how anxious Sarah seemed during the move. She hurriedly tried to load her belongings into the car but kept forgetting items, forcing her to run back and forth from the house to the street multiple times. This frantic behavior raised suspicions about her mental state. Sarah was particularly worried that Jason might return while she was moving, as she didn't want him to find out and interfere. When Sarah and her friends arrived at her new home, Jason appeared. Lawrence then asked Jason not to enter, and Jason complied. Jason lingered near the house for a while before leaving. Lawrence recalled that when Jason appeared, Sarah was very scared. She was shaking and crying, and she had been suffering from stress and anxiety for a long time. She truly believed that Jason had come to harm her, especially since he had previously threatened her with violence if she asked for help. 2 years later, the divorce was finalized. They decided to share custody of their children. At that time, their twins were 12 and 7 years old. Jason was also ordered to pay monthly child support to all 4 children and his wife, who was still struggling financially. The divorce had a significant impact on Jason's finances. He was ordered to pay $3,000. At the time, Jason was earning over $6,000 a month, meaning the court ordered him to pay half of his income to Sarah. However, she did not receive any of his assets, so she continued to live in the church. Jason also moved out, but to a house near his ex-wife's house, where he now lives with his mother. On November 27, 2017, Sarah was expected to return to work after Thanksgiving, but she did not show up for class that morning, which was very unusual for her. Colleagues were unable to contact her as she did not respond to messages on various platforms, raising concern about her behavior. Some teachers speculated that something serious might have occurred. Consequently, a colleague was sent to check on her. Tragically, at around 8:30 a.m., they discovered Sarah outside her home with multiple gunshot wounds. Police determined that Sarah was likely the victim of a violent attack. They found that she had left her home around 6:30 a.m. to go to work but was shot in the chest shortly after. An unknown assailant had fired a shotgun at close range, also wounding her in the head. Neighbors later informed the police that they had heard gunfire that morning. However, since it was a rural area where hunting was common, they did not think much. In these regions, residents often use firearms for hunting or to deter wild animals. Forensic experts found no fingerprints or tire marks at the crime scene. However, it was soon discovered that Sarah had just gone through a complicated divorce from her husband, which aroused the police's suspicions. Initial witnesses: Dana and Lawrence told police that Sarah's divorce followed a difficult marriage. During the final months of the divorce proceedings, Sarah expressed fear of her husband, believing that he might try to harm her. Jason lived only a few minutes' walk from her rented home. With this information, the police began to focus on the prime suspect, Jason. He was brought in for questioning, but he denied any involvement in Sarah's murder. He was released a few hours later when his alibi was confirmed. He had breakfast at a restaurant with his children, as evidenced by surveillance camera footage and witness testimony. Although Jason was released, suspicions surrounding him remained as Jason had a strong motive to harm Sarah. Furthermore, Sarah's friends and family confirmed that she was terrified of Jason. A press conference was held to update the public on the investigation, during which it was announced that the state governor had offered a $5,000 reward for any information leading to Sarah's killer. A local resident later added another $500 to the reward fund. Unfortunately, these efforts were fruitless. Police asked for the public's help in providing vital information to help move the case forward, but no leads came up and the case stalled for years. The local sheriff's department cooperated with the state police. However, the case remained stalled until December 2021. Police believe Jason was involved in the crime, possibly hiring a killer. He had a motive, as he had to pay more than half of his income to his ex-wife and children. It is believed that financial disputes led to the murder, and although he tried to gain full custody of the children, he was unsuccessful in court. While searching Jason's computer, police discovered a manuscript for a book he planned to publish. The manuscript contained chapters discussing his relationship with Sarah. Jason expressed a strong desire to avoid paying her the court-ordered amount and considered ways to avoid paying her. His writings included many derogatory comments about Sarah and women in general, which added to the police's suspicions of him. Additionally, police reviewed Jason's financial transactions and discovered that between September 7th and November 15th, the year Sarah was murdered, he made 7 transactions totaling $2,600. These transactions were made between Jason and a person named Lily. The investigation revealed that Lily was friends with Jason's brother, Darren, and that they had no further financial interactions. Through discussions with Lily, police learned that Jason had gifted his brother Darren a 2016 motorcycle, which was a costly item. The reason behind such an expensive gift was unclear, especially since Jason did not seem to have the financial means to afford it. He defended his actions by saying that he had been in an accident, but chose not to report it to the police. Instead, Jason gave his damaged bike to Darren to repair. Darren estimated the cost of the repairs at $5,000. Jason decided to send the money through Darren's friend, Lily. The total amount transferred was $2,600, which Jason claimed was for the motorcycle repairs. However, police suspect that this may actually have been a way to repay a debt to Darren, who may have been involved in the attack and death of Sarah. It is believed that Lily was used to conceal payments for the crime and help conceal their involvement. His brother, Darren, is described as a difficult person who had a difficult life in Texas. Darren has a criminal record that includes a 2013 speeding arrest in which illegal drugs were found. Although he received a short sentence for drug possession, this history has raised suspicions about his possible involvement in more serious crimes. Police investigated the brothers' communications and data, including seizing their cell phones. They identified Darren as the new prime suspect in Sarah's case. He traveled to Alabama just before Thanksgiving 2017. Darren arrived in the area on November 18th and stayed for 10 days, often staying near Sarah's home. Darren's location was tracked, showing he was near the church and turned off his mobile phone around midnight, just before Sarah's murder. This behavior suggested he was watching the Sarah and trying to hide his location from the police. His phone was back on around 10 a.m. the next day, back in Texas. Later that day, he sent Jason a coded message about a successful deer hunt, indicating they were using coded language to communicate. One of Sarah's neighbors reported seeing a motorcycle that looked like Jason's near her house several times before the murder. Shortly after the crime, the same motorcycle was spotted leaving the area, which added to the evidence. Based on this information, police determined that Jason had hired Darren to kill his ex-wife, leading to serious charges against both men. In December 2021, Jason requested a lawyer and denied any involvement in the crime, confidently asserting that the police would have no evidence against him. However, he later confessed to killing Sarah, repeatedly stating that he was guilty. Despite his confession, he was released on bail pending a hearing, requiring him to wear an ankle monitor. His trial is set for June 27, 2022. Darren's situation was quite complex. He went into hiding, prompting a nationwide FBI manhunt. His photo was widely distributed, and initially, a $10,000 reward was offered for information leading to his capture, which later increased to $22,500. On February 5, 2022, Darren turned himself in Texas. He chose not to plead guilty and waived his right to wait for the hearing while under house arrest, instead opting to stay in prison until the trial started. Throughout this period, Jason and Darren frequently spoke on the phone, but their conversations were monitored, and they did not discuss anything that could be used against them. The preparation of the case was delayed because there was a lot of circumstantial evidence but not enough direct evidence. After the police completed their investigation, on September 11, 2023, the trial of Jason Starr and Darren Starr finally began. The prosecution aimed to determine Jason's financial motive, emphasizing that he did not want to pay more than half of his income to Sarah. They presented substantial circumstantial evidence, including Jason's contact with Darren's brother in Texas, his use of his motorcycle to travel to Alabama, and the transfer of money. Lily claimed that she was not involved in any wrongdoing. According to her statement, she was unaware of what the Jason and Darren were doing and was surprised to learn she could be seen as being an accomplice to the crime. Eventually, it was decided not to pursue any charges against Lily. The attorney pointed out that there was a lack of strong evidence. There was no murder weapon found and there were no witnesses to the attack in person or recorded on surveillance cameras. Jason's computer notes appear to be an expression of his emotions and frustration after losing custody of his children and facing significant financial burdens. These notes reflected his emotional state and not any intent to kill. Therefore, none of this could be considered direct evidence of a desire to kill. During the 10 days Darren was in Alabama, the brothers did not speak to each other. They may have used disposable phones purchased online to communicate. The lack of any physical evidence at the scene of the massacre, such as shoe prints, fingerprints, DNA, or even motorcycle tire tracks. In addition, the lawyer also presented a video showing Jason having breakfast with his children in a restaurant 10 kilometers from Sarah's house, which happened at the same time the attackers shot Sarah. Jason fully cooperated with the investigation from the beginning by allowing police to search his cell phone and computer. His attorney highlighted this point, trying to convince the jury that a true criminal would never allow such a search, especially if they knew about the evidence against them. However, this argument was not convincing, especially given Jason's behavior and his confession after his arrest. The trial lasted 6 days. The jury then spent 6 hours deliberating their verdict. Ultimately, the jury decided that Jason Starr and Darren Starr were guilty of murder and conspiracy to murder. On January 4, 2024, both were sentenced to life in prison without parole and ordered to pay a $25,000 fine. Darren's attorney later announced plans to appeal the verdict, while Jason's defense attorney remained silent on the matter due to Jason's confession to the murder. The children were placed in the care of Sarah's parents. In court, the older twin expressed a desire to cut ties with their father, stating that they no longer wanted to see him. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Cher Lynn Hughes. Cher Hughes is a businesswoman in her 50s. Her husband, Keith Worrell, is 3 years younger than her. They are both from Florida and quickly fell in love with the tropical Bocas del Toro. They decided to move to Panama to start a new life. After living there for 6 months, they purchased a plot of land and built a small hotel called Casa del Sapa, which they both directly managed. Thanks to Cher and Keith's business acumen, they developed the hotel into a success. But they didn't stop there. Using her savings, Cher gradually acquired 4 additional properties to expand her business. One day, she excitedly told Keith that she had purchased an entire island. She loved the area so much that she couldn't help herself. She wanted to keep buying more properties and make it her permanent home. Together, they created their dream haven. Cher and Keith appeared deeply connected and were often referred to as Ken and Barbie for their harmonious relationship. It seemed they had a bright and happy future ahead of them. Sadly, Cher's fate was tragic. Although she was unable to have children, she always longed to be a mother. For years she underwent treatments and tried tirelessly to conceive, but her efforts were unsuccessful. However, she fulfilled her dream of becoming a mother by caring for and helping the local children on the island. She regularly bought them uniforms, school supplies, organized themed parties, boat trips, and fun events. The children loved her very much and called her Mrs. Cher. After a period of living on the island, Keith and Cher divorced. Keith began a new relationship with another woman, also an immigrant from the United States. Despite being betrayed, Cher still did not let herself fall. Determined to move forward, she mends her relationship with her sister Judy, whom she had not talked to much recently. To mark this fresh start, Cher planned a small gathering, inviting Judy and a few close friends. The intimate event was meant to help her heal, forget her husband, and found solace after their divorce. Cher had bought her sister Judy's ticket a month ago and was eager to see her again. Judy happily accepted her invitation and looked forward to the reunion. Judy missed her younger sister very much and was eager to mend their relationship. However, as Judy prepared for the trip, she abruptly stopped communicating. Over the next several days, she did not reply to messages or answer calls. Oddly, new posts appeared on her social network, but they were just recycled content from the past. This behavior seemed strange and somewhat alarming. Judy tried to find out why Cher ignored her, but all her questions went unanswered. Cher not only ignored Judy, but also all of her family and friends, who had also made repeated attempts to contact her. Growing increasingly concerned, Judy contacted Keith. However, he was cold and indifferent. He said that he was divorced from Cher. He claimed he had no idea where she was and made it clear that he had no plans to reconcile with or search for her. Cher's family thought this was unusual. They began checking her social media pages and contacting her acquaintances. Judy sent messages to nearly everyone Cher knew, explaining her disappearance, but no one had any significant information. About 10 days later, they received a message from Cher's account. In the message, Cher said she was relaxing with a man, but did not reveal his name. She also mentioned that the two were planning to go on a cruise. However, this explanation seemed confusing and out of character for Cher. Judy's worries grew stronger. Is there something fishy behind her seemingly normal divorce from Keith? His behavior had been strange, rude, and disrespectful, making Judy suspect he's hiding something. Cher's silence only makes Judy more worried. She started to fear that her sister might be in danger or even the victim of a crime. Determined to find answers, Judy contacted a friend of Cher's, Payne Thor, for help in the search. However, he wasn't able to find any useful leads. After 2 weeks of searching, he finally reported Cher's disappearance to the police. The case quickly attracted attention, thanks to Judy's frequent activity on social media. Moreover, during the 6 months she lived on the islands building her business, Cher became famous. She played an important role in the community, supporting children and people in difficulty. Hundreds of people were willing to help her family and find out the truth about her disappearance. However, the law enforcement system on the islands is very rudimentary. Despite their good intentions, the police department lacks both the resources and the capacity to investigate the case effectively. They questioned her acquaintances, but assumed that she was simply spending time with friends or that she had met a new man. When they learned that Cher was allegedly planning to go on a yacht, they accepted this theory and decided to close the case. Cher's family, who lived more than 2,000 kilometers away, were shocked and desperate. They contacted the U.S. Embassy in Panama to pressure the local police to speed up the investigation. The police received documents related to the case. Unsurprisingly, the first suspect was Cher's ex-husband Keith, who was summoned for questioning. He is ready to provide any information to exonerate himself as soon as possible. As the media covered the case, rumors began to circulate. Some accused Keith of being a cruel tyrant who mistreated Cher and was unfaithful to her. Many even suspected him of being involved in her disappearance. They had first met in Florida in 1993, when she visited Keith's bar. From the first moment, he was attracted to her, and so was she. After starting her own business, Cher set a goal to earn $1 million before moving on to new ventures, and she succeeded. Once she reached her goal, she and Keith relocated to the islands of Bocas del Toro. They loved it and decided to settle there. Their relationship grew stronger, and in 2005, they held a small wedding ceremony in the presence of close friends and family. In the timeline leading up to Cher's disappearance, detectives found it suspicious that she vanished soon after her divorce from Keith. They speculated that the two incidents might be connected and suspected that Keith knew more than he admitted. However, he has consistently denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claims they divorced amicably, despite Cher's feelings of hurt. He insisted he had no motive to harm her. As he stood to gain nothing, there was no inheritance or insurance payout involved. Their relationship had been legally dissolved. He also provided an alibi for the period of Cher's disappearance, but this was complicated by the fact that the exact time she went missing was unclear. Cher lived alone, and no one could determine precisely when she had disappeared. The investigation was further complicated by the belief among locals that Cher, a kind and well-liked person, could not have had enemies or quarrels with anyone. However, police received information from several witnesses that she had gone on a cruise with a man before her disappearance. The witnesses did not know who this man was. There was also evidence that she had sold all of her possessions to a man named Wild Bill before she disappeared. This was suspicious, as she had been waiting for her sister Judy to arrive and had no plans to leave the area. Furthermore, She did not say goodbye to anyone before she disappeared, which was very strange for someone who was so well connected and friendly with the local community. Wild Bill turned out to be a neighbor and friend of Cher. When questioned, he claimed that she had voluntarily sold her assets to him because she had fallen in love with a new man and decided to give up all her work. His explanation convinced the detectives. They verified the details and prepared to close the case. However, Cher's family does not accept this conclusion. They do not know where she is, and she has not contacted them. Unable to go to Panama themselves, the family asks the police to continue the investigation and seeks the assistance of a local journalist named Don Winner. Don Winner, a journalist for a news site for the expat community in Panama, is fluent in both English, Spanish, and is well versed in handling complex situations on the islands. He decides to conduct an investigation to help the Hughes family seek justice. When he takes on the case, he is provided with a copy of the police report and other relevant data. During the investigation, he quickly realizes that Cher had no intention of leaving the country. This is puzzling, since a celebrity like Cher would not have disappeared without a trace. As Don continued his investigation, he discovered that Cher was not alone in Bocas del Toro's disappearance. Just 4 months earlier, a 58-year-old antique dealer named Bo Islar had also mysteriously disappeared. Cher and Bo knew each other. Although their personalities were different, she was outgoing and outgoing. He was more reserved. The important thing they had in common was that they had both sold their properties to Wild Bill shortly before they disappeared. Wild then put them up for sale. Bo's family believed he had moved to Argentina, so they did not actively search for him. However, the disappearance of both Bo and Cher raised concerns that there might be a serial killer operating on the islands, kidnapping or even murdering people. This caused panic and fear in the local community. Don continued to investigate and began to suspect that Wild was involved. After Cher's disappearance, he often hosted parties at her house, which was quite unusual. He did not even remove her picture from the wall, which gave off a creepy feeling. Furthermore, he hired someone to renovate her house and then sold it for a higher price. Don believed he was on the right track and began gathering more information about Wild Bill. Witnesses said he owned a gun, which was illegal in Panama. They said they saw him carrying it and heard bullets from time to time. This testimony gave the police a good reason to investigate. Don turned over all the information he had gathered to the police, and they found the evidence compelling. Police obtained a search warrant for Wild's home. During the search, they discovered a grisly collection of Nazi symbols, horror memorabilia, and jars of human teeth and crowns. They also found a large cache of weapons and ammunition. He was apparently obsessed with horror movies, owning a large collection of them, including videos of real-life murders on the dark web. Among the items seized was Cher's handbag, which contained her documents and several credit cards. They also found a cell phone and several personal items belonging to Bo, who had gone missing earlier. However, neither Wild nor his wife were home at the time. Investigators found Cher's dog at her house. When police tried to take the dog away, it kept returning to the house. Each time they took the dog on a boat 1 kilometer away from shore, it jumped off, swam back to shore, and ran straight home. Finally, the dog led them to a location in Wild's backyard. They assumed the dog was trying to point something out, so they decided to search the area. Meanwhile, workers who had renovated Wild's house before selling it were called in for questioning. One of them revealed that Wild had asked him to dig a hole in the backyard to bury his trash. The worker pointed out the exact location, and excavation was scheduled for the next day. During the excavation, investigators discovered the body of a woman in her 40s. Based on the condition of the remains, she had been buried for approximately 3 to 4 months. Dental records confirmed that it was the body of Cher, who had gone missing. Bo's body was also found in the same pit. but in a more advanced state of decomposition, having been buried longer. A third body was discovered nearby, but identification was difficult because the head was missing. The remains were found one after another, one skeleton after another. In total, 5 bodies were found, but the identities of 3 of them remain unknown. Investigators soon turned their attention to Wilde. They uncovered that his real name was William Dathan Holbert, a 30-year-old man from North Carolina, USA. In 2007, he moved to the area with his second wife, Laura Michelle Reese. He had an extensive criminal history and was wanted in 6 states for various offenses. Neighbors described them as noisy and annoying. His wife, who introduced herself as Gina Cortez, was considered rude and odd. They rarely appeared in public except when attending parties at bars. Gina claimed to be a veterinarian, but when a neighbor sought her help with a dog, she was unable to provide assistance. She explained that her expertise was in large farm animals, like horses and cattle. This has raised doubts about the authenticity of her words. William Dathan Holbert, known as Wilde, was the only child in his family. His father worked for a company that manufactured agricultural machinery. He grew up in a beautiful 2-story house, was well educated, and participated in sports regularly. He seemed to have a promising future. He married his first wife, Ryan, in 1998 at just 18 years old. Within a year, they had their first child. Over the next 4 years, they had 2 more children. During that time, he does design work, and his wife was a housewife. After his father died, Wilde and his family moved back to his parents' house and took over the management of the family farm. At this time, neighbors, friends, and relatives began to notice that Wilde had become extremely angry. Many believed that this could be due to his steroid use, but there were also signs that he had mental health problems. He often lost control and attacked his wife and children. His wife Ryan was very concerned about these changes, especially when Wilde, for unknown reasons, wanted to kill the family's healthy and docile dog. Despite his protests, his wife took the dog to the vet, but the vet refused. In a fit of rage, he killed the dog in front of his children and dumped the body. This action shocked and saddened his family and neighbors. During this time, Wilde's business ventures and his father's farm failed. Then he decided to enter politics. He bought some business suits and announced his candidacy for mayor. However, his strange and aggressive behavior caused gossip, and no one took his political ambitions seriously. Despite this, he remained confident and believed he could win. Unfortunately, an incident involving his dog further tarnished his reputation and ended any hopes of a political career. In 2003, Wilde met the Hoover family at a fitness center he frequented. He made an impression as a successful businessman. Unaware of Wilde's previous failed ventures, the Hoover family decided to buy a third gym in 2004 and put him in charge. This was an opportunity for him to prove his ability, but he managed it ineffectively and could not buy the necessary training equipment on time. Instead, he rented an apartment near the gym, which was only a few minutes' drive from his home. He lived there with his mistress, Laura, while maintaining the facade of a normal family life with his wife and children. By 2004, Wilde's wife, Ryan, discovered that he was having an affair with Laura, which led to the breakdown of his family. Around the same time, he secretly to sell the Hoover family gym. This came to light in 2005 when he filed for bankruptcy. After leaving, he left behind tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid bills, loans, and debts. Despite having a monthly income of about $1,600, he was spending up to $4,000 each month. Later, his lover, Laura, opened a Russian-themed bookstore. However, this store also quickly failed. Wilde lived in Santa Fe for a while and worked on various projects. However, He began to run into trouble when he was caught selling culturally valuable items, which turned out to be stolen. After being arrested, he escaped. He and Laura escaped from the police in an SUV. They drove through fields and down dirt roads. They eventually made it to Florida, where they boarded a cruise ship and continued their escape by getting off the ship in Panama. In Panama, they started a business selling motorcycle parts. He began using the pseudonym Ulf, despite being one of America's most wanted criminals. At the time, he was about 20 years old. Interestingly, photos of him from this period show him completely bald. On the islands, however, he grew out his hair to better conceal his identity. During this time, he actively sought advice from lawyers and experts in Panama's legal system, paying particular attention to the procedures required to purchase and register real estate. After buying their first house, they converted it into a bar named Private. There, they hosted parties and invited everyone to join them. Wilde and Laura openly promoted their bar, even placing ads in the local newspaper. However, neighbors were puzzled as to how the bar was kept afloat, as it was clearly not profitable. When questioned about his source of income, he simply replied that he was a millionaire and that he worked for fun. Over time, he began buying and reselling items. Eventually, it was revealed that he was murdering people to seize their property, allowing him to amass a large sum of money and live a comfortable life. As news of Wilde's dark past spread, many local residents fled their homes. Some speculated that he could escape by boat, while others thought he might flee by plane. The remote islands made it easy for him to escape, and with his wealth he could hide anywhere in the world. Forensic experts quickly determined that Cher and Beau had both been killed with a weapon to the head at close range. 3 more bodies were later identified as the Brown family, immigrants from the United States. The family included Mike Brown, his wife, and their school-age son. They had also had contact with the other victims, Cher and Beau, and were all from the same community. Mike owned the house where Wilde lived and ran the bar. When the Brown family disappeared, the new owner, Wilde, announced that he had bought the property from them. As with other victims, law enforcement treated the case as if the family had willingly left. The police stopped searching as soon as they heard claims that people had simply left or traveled elsewhere. It is worth noting that after Mike Brown disappeared, money was still being withdrawn from his account daily, through ATMs. This activity led the police to believe he was still alive, so they did not consider the possibility of his abduction. Over time, the investigation was dropped altogether. It was only when the case was reopened that investigators discovered the withdrawals were linked to a man named Wilde and Laura, who were wanted. The police then began searching for the two. A few days later, a police boat intercepted a ship heading for Nicaragua. Among the passengers were Wilde and Laura. They resisted arrest, forcing an officer to the use of a weapon to subdue them. Before their capture, they had been living in a rented house in Costa Rica. One evening, when they saw a wanted ad on TV, they packed their belongings and attempted to escape. However, someone noticed them and reported their location, leading to their detention. After being arrested, they were charged with the murder of 5 people. However, Wilde refused to give up. He initially maintained his innocence, but when the evidence against him became too overwhelming, he changed his story. He suddenly claimed that Keith owed him $45. This claim was clearly untrue, as Keith barely knew him. Furthermore, there was no logical reason for him to kill Cher and the other neighbors on the island. Keith eventually decided to cooperate with the investigation, which played a key role in uncovering the truth behind the case. However, he feared that his testimony might be considered complicity. He faced the possibility of ending up in prison alongside Wilde, but Wilde later admitted that he had framed Keith and that Keith had nothing to do with the murders. Wilde eventually confessed that he had not only killed Beau and Cher, but also the Brown family. He detailed how he had murdered them in several different locations. Thus, in the 4 years he had lived on the island, he had killed a total of 5 people. According to Wilde's testimony, he invited Cher to dinner to discuss buying her property. She agreed to the meeting, but later that evening, he lured her to the backyard and attacked the back of her head from close range. He then placed her body on an ATV, drove it to a dump on his property, and hid it in a pre-dug hole. He covered the body with dirt and ordered the workers to bury it carefully, while they were completely unaware that they were assisting in a crime. He used a similar method to conceal the evidence of his other murders. His motive was simple greed. He wanted to take their property for himself and was willing to kill to achieve his goal. One day, Wilde got into a fight with another American immigrant and killed the American. He casually buried the body afterwards. He expressed regret and sorrow over his actions during a conversation. However, Laura has steadfastly denied any involvement in the crime. She claimed she knew nothing about what he had done and insisted she had no role in it. This claim was hard to believe. As a result, she was charged with complicity. 11 days after her body was found, Cher's friends and family held a funeral for her. She was buried on the island of Bocas del Toro, which she considered her paradise and her final resting place. The farewell ceremony took place on the highest point of the island, where her ashes were placed in a small hole, and a memorial tribute was set on a tree to honor her. Prosecutors asked for life sentences for both William and Laura. However, the legal process in Panama moved very slowly. Even so, the prosecutor insisted that they would not be lenient with the killers. William Dathan Holbert, also known as Wild Bill, confessed his guilt in court. He was sentenced to 47 years in a local prison, and Laura Michelle Reese was sentenced to 26 years for being an accessory, although she did not admit to helping her husband. In court, neither showed any remorse. After being imprisoned, they divorced. Despite their imprisonment, they were not too upset. In 2015, Laura remarried Sadovnikov. While serving his sentence, Wilde established a church that gained official recognition from the Panama Prison Service. He proudly called himself the advisor of this religious organization and began representing Panama in defending the rights of those serving prison sentences. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Marta Russo. The Marta Russo case not only shocked Italy in the late 1990s, but also became a symbol of unsolved mysteries in the history of criminal justice. The sudden death of a promising young woman on the campus of Sapienza University, which is considered a symbol of intellectualism and enlightenment, left the whole society in a state of shock. Behind that tragic event, the doubts, controversies, and the inscrutable motives of those accused created a story that was heartbreaking and mysterious. Today's story will show how carelessness can lead to dire consequences when an investigation begins. Typically, the circumstances tend to complicate the investigation. Unfortunately, some detectives manipulate these circumstances to fit their narrative. This can result in a controversial case like the one we will discuss today, which still many unanswered questions. Marta Russo, born in 1975, described as intelligent, energetic, and promising. At the time of the events, Marta had just turned 22 in March. She was a young and beautiful law student at the prestigious University of La Sapienza in Rome. Fulfilling her long-held dream of attending this historic institution, Marta had ambitious plans for her future and aspired to become a lawyer. Before achieving that goal, she needed to complete her degree. She was known for being compassionate and sociable, always eager to help others. She even expressed her wish to donate her organs in the event of her death. On the morning of May 9, 1997, she was having a typical day, walking on the university campus with her friend Rosanna Capone. moving between the buildings of the University of Statistics, Politics, and Law. They were carrying textbooks and notebooks while discussing their upcoming exams. There were no signs of anything unusual happening. Suddenly, at 11:42, Rosanna heard a strange clicking sound, and Marta collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Rosanna thought it might have been a weapon, but she wasn't certain. Several witnesses who saw Marta fall rushed over to help. However, other passers-by disagreed with Rosanna's belief that Marta had been attacked by force. They listened to Rosanna but thought she was mistaken, as the possibility of a violent attack at such a time and place seemed too improbable. All doubts were quickly resolved when a pool of blood began to form beneath the head of Marta. Who would attack a defenseless student in the middle of the day on a university campus filled with people? It seemed unbelievable. Marta had been wounded, and a small bullet hole was discovered in her left ear, indicating that the bullet had entered her brain. Bystanders called for an ambulance right away, which arrived to assess her condition. Marta was alive but in critical condition and needed to be rushed to the hospital. Once at the clinic, she fell into a coma. Her brain function ceased, but life support was maintained in hopes that she might recover. Her parents prayed for her safety and hoped she would regain consciousness. Meanwhile, doctors recognized that her chances of recovery were nearly non-existent. Even if Marta did wake up, there was almost a certainty that she would be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. At the time, forensic experts were working at the crime scene. It was an open area connecting two university buildings. Along the edges of the passage, there was a building facade with windows and a blank wall opposite, with a few sparse trees. Detectives needed to determine the attacker's location at the time of the incident. Marta's friend couldn't pinpoint where the sound came from. It was very quiet, and Rosanna was the only witness to hear the sound of the attack. Another challenge arose when Marta's body was moved several times during attempts to help her. This made it difficult for detectives to establish her exact position when she was attacked, to find the location of the criminal. In order to understand who could even have the idea to shoot an ordinary student, the police began investigating Marta's background. Investigators believed that she may have been in contact with a villain or even involved in a crime, but the investigation showed that the victim was an ordinary, kind girl, and studying her biography did not turn up any potential suspects. Her friends were also typical students, and she had not been in a relationship recently, she spending all her free time studying. Even her diary entries were examined, but they contained nothing suspicious. The investigators began to suspect that the killer's true target was Rosanna. Marta just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, so was killed by accident. The police had gathered some remarkable information. In the days leading up to the murder, Rosanna received 45 anonymous phone calls, which were quite unusual. When she answered one call, there was only silence on the other end, and she gained no information. Additionally, an unknown man called Rosanna's father late at night caused a heated debate where he insulted her but never revealed his identity. With this information, the police started to believe that the attacker intended to kill Rosanna, but mistakenly killed Marta instead. They considered the possibility that the attack was a failed act of revenge against Rosanna's father. He is an influential official who oversaw several prisons. The investigators was thought that the murder of his daughter could be the work of a former inmate. However, detectives investigated these theories and ultimately found them unconvincing. While Rosanna's father may have had enemies, there was no evidence to suggest a motive for harming his family members. Another hypothesis is put forward. The university, in addition to its fame, always had a bad reputation. There have been multiple uprisings and spontaneous attacks on campus. Such cases do happen with alarming frequency. This university was even the site of a terrorist attack on February 12, 1980. unknown assailants riot in the lobby by weapon in one of the academic buildings while a professor was present. He was attacked 7 times and died as a result. This attack was not an isolated incident. It occurred during a time of heightened political tension, with similar outbreaks linked to the so-called Red Brigades. On March 27, 1985, a university economics professor became a victim of unknown criminals in a new attack. The Red Brigades claimed responsibility for these crimes, stating that such actions were part of their political struggle. However, the murder of Marta, and even Rosanna in 1997, appeared to be senseless acts of violence in this context. Another supporting detail for this theory is the coincidence that May 9th marked the anniversary of the discovery of the body of Aldo Moro, a prominent political figure. It is believed that on this occasion, the Red Brigades decided to launch a new artillery attack. In previous incidents, the Red Brigades had openly admitted their guilt for the crimes they committed. Yet this time, no one took responsibility for the attack on Marta Russo. This was illogical, as it would have made more political sense to target a university professor rather than an ordinary student. As the police investigated, doctors were tried to save Marta. A surgeon removed a .22 caliber bullet from her head, which was then sent to the lab for analysis. At this point, ballistics experts believed that the faint noise heard was likely due to either the use of a silencer or the types of weapons that produce a quieter sound, especially at a distance, making it hard to identify. The .22 caliber was a common choice, as it has low stopping power and generates significantly less noise than more weapon firearms. Forensic experts worked on reconstructing the bullet's trajectory to help identify potential shooting locations. However, because the body had been moved, their efforts were ultimately insufficient and likely inaccurate. The investigation indicated that the attacker likely operated from a building across the street from where the victim was walking. It was presumed that the guy has attacked from a window. Calculation suggested that the guy was in a bathroom adjacent to the classrooms where statistics students were studying. Given the low number of students present at that time, this location allowed the attacker to remain unnoticed and escape without drawing attention. The day after the attack, this theory was supported by a statement from a statistics student who reported visiting the bathroom shortly after the incident. He noticed that the window was wide open, even though it was usually kept closed. Detectives focused their efforts on the area, including the street beneath the window. They quickly located the shell casing from the weapon, which had been overlooked on the first day because it was hidden under a car. To the surprise of ballistic experts, the casing did not match the bullet that killed Marta. Investigators found numerous bullet holes on the wall next to the crime scene. It appears that the students used the restroom as a weapons practice range. Someone had been practicing frequently. A cartridge case discovered at the scene might have come from these practice sessions. While investigating the bathroom, police also uncovered a small nearby room used as a storage area by a cleaning company that worked at the university. Given the trajectory of the bullet, detectives considered this room as a possible location from which the criminal attacked. Access to this room was initially restricted. Investigators conducted thorough checks on all cleaning company employees associated with the university. They discovered that many of these employees were weapon enthusiasts with licenses. Some of them could obtain weapons even without a license. Furthermore, the inventory storage room contained a significant amount of ammunition. Investigators found various types of weapons and equipment, including silencers. They also discovered several different types of bullets, including .22 caliber cartridges. It is curious that the employees of the cleaning company were free from cleaning from 9 to 14 o'clock, and there should not have been anyone there. The attack on Marta occurred at 11:42 a.m., which fell within this time frame. Investigators needed to interview all the cleaners, but they offer alibis in an effort to clear themselves of suspicion. Eventually, all the employees' information was verified. During the investigation, no illegal firearm storage was discovered, as the owners had proper licenses were registered. The cleaning staff admitted that they occasionally used the wall of a nearby building as a weapons practice range, but they insist on always practicing from a trailer and being cautious when no one is around. This situation raised more questions. On May 14, the equipment keeping Marta alive was turned off, and she was pronounced dead. She had been in a coma for 5 days without recovering. Her parents and sister honored her last wish by donating her organs. Around 10,000 people attended Marta's funeral, including relatives, friends, students, and local residents who wanted to pay their respects to her. The mother of Marta revealed that she felt a strong sense of anxiety on the morning of the tragedy, which she found impossible to shake off. Initially, she didn't think much of her unease until the police contacted her about Marta's problem. There was growing public dissatisfaction with the police due to a series of high-profile cases that had not been solved. These failures severely harmed the reputation of the police in Rome. Therefore, they was urgently necessary to restore the lost reputation. This provoked decisive actions from the police, which had a devastating effect. The investigation began when detectives approached the librarian, a 36-year-old man who owns a suppressor and a .22 caliber weapon. Initially, he was considered a suspect, but he had a solid alibi. He was in the audience during the attack, and many witnesses confirmed his presence. As a result, he was cleared of suspicion. The detectives enlisted top forensic experts to search for microscopic gunpowder particles in the building. They meticulously examined windowsills, floors, and various surfaces to identify the location from which of the attacker. Unfortunately, significant time had elapsed since the incident, and the room had been cleaned multiple times. Additionally, rain the following day may have washed away any evidence on the building's exterior. Investigators scoured several floors, and after about 3 hours, they discovered 2 tiny particles of barium and antimony, which are linked to weapon. However, not on the windowsills in the restroom, but on the floor above, in office number 6, rather than on the restroom windowsills. In office number 6, a stain on the windowsill was suspected to be gunpowder, but it was uncertain because many employees in the building owned weapon. Therefore, it was challenging to determine who might have left the trace. Despite the doubt, the stain was deemed reliable evidence. The substance's chemical composition was analyzed, revealing similarities to printer ink or burnt rubber. Investigators concentrated on office number 6, which was a likely location for the attack. Based on the possible trajectory calculations, the attack could have originated from almost anywhere on the campus facade, including the roof. Nevertheless, the police identified the individuals who were in that room during the time of the attack. The office was designated for department assistants, and both students and faculty could access it. All individuals present were questioned. During the investigation, detectives noticed a peculiar pattern. Each person claimed they were not in room number 6 at the time of the murder. The investigators suspected this was a sign of collusion among them. While searching office number 6, they discovered a mobile phone that had made a call at 11:44 on the day of the case, just minutes after the attack. The investigators traced the call to a professor's daughter named Maria Chiara Lipari. She admitted to being in the room during the call, but claimed she did not see anyone with a weapon. She firmly denied any involvement in the murder, stating she did not know Marta, had no motive, and did not possess a weapon of the specified caliber. At this point, the police officers were determined to investigate the situation involving office number 6 thoroughly. They decided to interview Maria at the police station. During these interviews, Maria appeared confused and changed her story multiple times. She was questioned 13 times, and she provided new details in almost every session. Afterward, she expressed that the investigators were pressuring her. Eventually, she recalled that when she returned to office number 6 to make a phone call, A man had come out to meet her. He mumbled something unclear, like hello, but Maria did not recognize him and only watched as he walked away. However, her account changed once again. Maria had a confirmed alibi, which ultimately protected her from being accused. She attributed her behavior to fear and severe stress, and ultimately, she was crossed off the list of suspects. Unfortunately, Maria's troubles were just beginning. One of the suspects was a man named Salvatore Ferraro, who, out to be an assistant in philosophy and law. Maria identified him, and he quickly began cooperating with the police. She felt compelled to do this under the threat of being charged. According to her, he resembled the young man who had exited office number 6 when she entered, but she remained uncertain until the very end. The story underwent frequent changes, likely due to the ongoing pressure on Maria. The first interrogation lasted 14 hours, after which investigators repeatedly approached her, increasing the pressure. It is unclear if Maria can be considered a reliable source, but the detectives were determined to find the killer at any cost. To verify her statements, they conducted numerous interrogations with other individuals connected to office number 6. These witnesses provided inconsistent testimonies that did not align with one another. In light of this, the investigators worked hard to piece the information together. At one point, Bruno Romano, the university director, intervened. She expressed her dissatisfaction with the police's handling of the case and pointed out several violations she had observed. Her main concern was that the investigation was not allowing lawyers to be present during witness interviews. Because of her complaints, the director herself became a suspect, now under investigation for allegedly covering up for the killer to protect the university from problems. Under public pressure, the police sought to find a suspect, but all the individuals they considered had solid alibis. The focus then shifted to Gabriella Aledo, the secretary of the university head. Maria reported that Gabriella had been in office number 6 before the attack. The police began to put serious pressure on Gabriella, even threatening her. In parallel, they established wiretapping of the phone in the office where she worked, and there were even plans to install a hidden camera. During her conversations with investigators, Gabriella faced explicit threats. They warned her that if she didn't identify the murderer, she would be accused of the crime herself. On the 45th anniversary of the incident, Gabriella, wanting to protect her career and personal life, stated that she was far from office number 6 and had no knowledge of who might be responsible for the murder. She emphasized that an illness she had endured for years prevented her use of weapons. The detectives were so eager to resolve the case that they even brought in doctors to verify her medical condition. They interrogated Gabriella relentlessly, including her son-in-law, who worked in law enforcement, to pressure her into confessing. Despite being a relative, he played a role in forcing her to confess. The other detectives departed, leaving Gabriella alone with her son-in-law. Despite the circumstances, he was unable to extract a confession from her. The only thing she admitted was that she had been in office number 6. The absence of lawyers added to the complications of the situation, driving Gabriella into despair. Besides, on June 11, authorities decided to arrest director Bruno Romano, charging him with aiding and abetting the murderer, as it was suspected he was covering up for the crime. Later, when criminal cases were brought against all participants in the investigation for abuse of office, the prosecutor insisted that this was a trick to scare those involved. Gabriella, feeling the weight of the intimidation, especially following the arrest of the director, lost her composure out of fear. Eventually, she revealed that on the day of the murder, she saw 2 men in office number 6. One of them drew a weapon when Marta Russo and her friend were positioned between the window and the opposite wall. He attacked, causing Marta to fall. Gabriella also recalled that the young men appeared panicked and clearly did not expect to kill anyone, as they ran away in fear. Witnesses identified the gunman as Salvatore Ferraro. The second man was recognized as Giovanni Scattoni, a 29-year-old philosophy assistant. After receiving the confessions, the detectives were able to piece together all the information. Initially, the young men did not appear to be the type to commit a cold-blooded murder. Even unintentionally, the investigators were not troubled by the fact that Salvatore and Giovanni were not acquainted with Marta and had no motive. They repeatedly denied their guilt, but the Gabriella's confession making it difficult to deny. A major issue for Salvatore arose from the searches conducted in his apartment, where forensic books about the ideal crime were discovered. Investigators quickly assumed that this suggested he had plans for a perfect murder. Although Salvatore argued that he needed this material for his university research, the investigators pointed out that forensic science is not typically a focus for philosophers. However, there was a significant problem. The detectives had been unable to find the weapon that killed Marta. During the trial, both Salvatore and Giovanni maintained their calm demeanor and continued to assert their innocence. There was no direct evidence linking them to the crime, yet the prosecution labeled them as ruthless murderers. Although the prosecution presented evidence from Gabriella, but the jury was out on this. They focused on the traces of gunpowder found on the windowsill of office number 6 and the bullet's trajectory, overlooking the fact that this information was largely inaccurate and speculative. Witnesses who had endured long periods of torture testified. The trial photos clearly showed that Gabriella and Maria struggled to conceal their fear. This situation echoed the experience of a security guard who had seen the defendants in office number 6. He had been a suspect in the case, but chose to cooperate with the police and was later cleared of any suspicion. During the trial, Gabriella recounted how the defendants fled the university after the attack, but this did not prove their involvement in the case. The defense lawyers for the students pointed out that the particles found on the windowsill were not from weapon, but rather from car exhaust. This suggested that the attack could have originated from a different window, potentially implicating other individuals. The lawyer argued that the witness testimonies were exaggerated. Experts, based on their reconstruction of the events, believed that Marta's death resulted from a tragic accident during a reckless game. The attack occurred accidentally due to a series of ricochets hitting her head, which would classify it as manslaughter. By the end of the trial in 2001, both defendants were found guilty. Giovanni received a reduced sentence of 5 years for manslaughter and unlawful possession of firearms, initially sentenced to 7 years. Salvatore involved in the torture of women, but had all charges dropped by university officials. After their convictions, they appealed their sentences, prompting a review. The Supreme Court upheld Giovanni's manslaughter sentence, but dismissed the illegal possession charge. Consequently, Giovanni's prison time was shortened to 5 years, and he was ordered to pay 300,000 euros in legal fees. This case raises many questions, as there is still uncertainty about the guilt of Giovanni and Salvatore, making it a highly controversial situation. However, some supporters feel that justice has been served. The victims of the police officers' actions spoke out, expressing their dissatisfaction, leading to significant public outcry in internal investigations. Their accounts were corroborated by strong evidence, which included several interrogation recordings that contained threats. These victims have expressed their concerns to investigators. Gabriella reported feeling intimidated and unsafe, and she highlighted the lack of legal representation during interrogations. This action was risky, as it was believed that the police might have support. So, their appeal led to a new investigation. Unfortunately, it quickly ended with no police officers facing any consequences. Gabriella and Maria have long been free and are continuing their lives. Gabriella, now over 50, is a philosophy teacher in Rome who has had to decline several opportunities and faces criticism. Salvatore Ferraro works as a lawyer. He writes books, appears in shows, and helps those who have suffered from injustice and cruelty. The most troubling aspect is that if there was indeed a miscarriage of justice, Marta's killer is still at large. To help alleviate some of the pain caused by this situation, an exception was made for Marta's family. Marta's mother was permitted to embrace the woman who has survived for 20 years thanks to Marta's heart. She is grateful for this gift, recognizing that through this generous act, a part of Marta lives on in others. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jean-Pierre Triber. At approximately 3 p.m., on November 4, 2004, a woman named Maria went to a police station in Burgundy, France, to report the disappearance of her sister, Katia L'Herbier. Maria was worried because her sister had not been in touch for several days. Katia has not been to work since November 1st and has missed important meetings, which is very unusual. The last person to speak with Katia was a family member, Sonia L'Herbier. Katia had met her friend Geraldine Girard on November 1. Katia had planned to spend the weekend with her. Since that day, Geraldine had also gone missing. She was known for her punctuality, making her sudden disappearance very concerning. Both women had not been reachable, and Geraldine's voicemail was full. 3 days had passed, and the gendarmes insisted there was no cause for concern. They argued that Katia and Geraldine had simply gone to a country house to relax, and that their fun may have lasted longer than expected. This dismissive attitude from the police prompted Geraldine's father to reach out to the prosecutor's office to initiate a search, but he received a similarly indifferent response. Frustrated by the lack of action from the authorities, Geraldine's brother decided to conduct his own investigation. Geraldine's family was aware of her friend Venue, although no one had seen Venue yet. Venue and Geraldine met just 2 weeks before she went missing, through a mutual friend, and they quickly became close. Geraldine's family searched for her silver Peugeot 206 on the outskirts of the city, but their efforts were fruitless. A few days later, they made a public appeal through the media. News of Katia and Geraldine's disappearance sparked a strong public reaction, and that attracted the attention of law enforcement. A search operation was launched, and media interest grew, particularly because the case involved well-known individuals. During the initial investigation, police were able to track Katia and Geraldine's mobile phone locations, review their last calls. The last call from Geraldine's phone was made on November 1, 2004, when she contacted a stranger near La Pistole, near a country house. They later discovered that on the evening of November 1, her card was used to withdraw about $260 at 9:50 p.m., shortly after she made her last call. The detectives requested surveillance footage from the ATM to identify who made the withdrawal. Footage shows 2 young women, resembling Katia and Geraldine, making a cash withdrawal. The next day, November 2, about $72 was withdrawn from Katia's card in Paris. This did not raise suspicion, as she often traveled to Paris for work or shopping. Unfortunately, the footage from that camera could not be obtained. There was also a purchase made at a nearby supermarket. Detectives went to the store and spoke with the cashier. The employee did not clearly remember the 2 women's faces, but had a vague memory of them making a purchase. The store did not have a security system in place to capture the transaction. The only unusual detail was the receipt, which showed a purchase of cheap beer and spicy snacks. Katia and Geraldine's relatives insisted that none of them bought such things because they had never used them before. If they want to drink alcohol, they will prefer fine wine. It was concerning that they had not contacted their families. The investigation continues, focusing on another supermarket. Detectives reviewed surveillance footage, but found no one resembling Katia and Geraldine. The shopping list had an oddity. A pack of diapers had been purchased, which was unusual since they had no children. Luckily, the cashier remembered that a man had bought diapers. This caused serious concerns, as Katia and Geraldine could not give their cards to a stranger. The cashier reviewed the camera footage and recognized the buyer, although she did not know his name. He was a man of about 40 years old and had a bald spot on his head. Police have a blurry image of the suspect involved in the kidnapping of Katia and Geraldine. His arrest is crucial to finding out how Geraldine and Katia's bank cards ended up in his hands. Luckily for investigators, the man reappeared. His next transaction took place at a gas station. Surveillance cameras captured the incident, showing a man driving a white Peugeot 205. The recordings provide clearer images, revealing part of the license plate. An analysis of the databases yielded 800 matches for that plate in the area, but only 6 were registered as Peugeot 205 cars. Within hours, the search was narrowed down to one specific individual. The man in question was Jean-Pierre Triber. A check of his address revealed that he lived near the ATM where the first transaction occurred, just a few kilometers away. The last signal from Geraldine's phone pointed to his residence, but when the detectives arrived, he was not there. They then go to his workplace and learn that he is currently on vacation. However, detectives confirmed images from the supermarket and gas station showed it was Jean, 44 years old. The office clerk informed the detectives that Jean would be returning to work the next morning. They planned to wait for him at 7:35 a.m. When he drove the white car into the parking lot, they arrested him. He remained calm and did not seem to understand the situation. They quickly confiscated his wallet and discovered that it contained Katia and Geraldine's cards. Jean-Pierre Triber was born on April 8, 1963, in Luza. He was the youngest of 3 children in his family. His father was a war veteran, and his mother was a homemaker. He dropped out of school in the 5th grade and later attended the Agricultural Academy. But he did not graduate due to an eye condition. A failed surgery resulted in him having a half-closed eyelid. He enjoyed hunting and started a tree trimming business, which ultimately failed. He then worked as a forester and later as an agricultural worker. Most recently, he had a job in an office. In 1989, he married a woman who had a child from a previous relationship, and he treated that child as his own. They have a daughter, and he may have bought diapers for her. Jean was quickly arrested. During his initial questioning, he claimed that he had met Katia and Geraldine about a month earlier, when they had given him a lift to another city. However, he later changed his story, stating that he had seen them regularly over the past several months. He also mentioned that the 3 of them had gone bowling and had dinner together several times. This was obviously a lie, as they had only known each other for 2 weeks. As investigators questioned Jean, he began to add more strange details to his story. Eventually, he claimed that Geraldine, Katia had planned their escape and that he had helped them in some way. For example, he said that they gave him their bank cards so that he could freely access their money. He suggested that this was a gesture of thanks, but he never clarified what specific help he had provided. He hid this information from the police, which made his story seem unconvincing, and no one believed him. The investigators searched Jean's house, but found no incriminating evidence. He was arrested because they suspected he was concealing more information. He becomes the prime suspect in a kidnapping or even a double murder. During subsequent questioning, he gave a new story, claiming that he had met Katia and Geraldine in late summer 2004. They would spend time together, despite the fact that Katia and Geraldine did not know each other at the time. The detectives chose not to confront him about this obvious lie, allowing him to continue his narrative. Jean admitted that on November 1, 2004, he and Katia and Geraldine agreed to meet. Geraldine proposed a strange plan to blackmail someone, and all 3 traveled to Paris, where they intended to visit a bar and wait for a specific person to arrive. The plan involved breaking the window of the person's car and stealing 2 suitcases from inside. Jean plans to deliver the stolen items to Katia and Geraldine. They will then go to another bar together to meet 2 more people and exchange the suitcases. Jean claims that their plan was successful, but then Katia and Geraldine disappear. Although his story was convincing, detectives noticed that he seemed to be fabricating details as he spoke. Upon examining his mobile phone, they discovered inconsistencies in his account. When confronted with these discrepancies, he appeared visibly unsettled. Strangely, he had never been in trouble with the law before, and seemed to be a kind, calm man with his wife and children. However, he was experiencing marital issues and had moved in with his parents during that time. He was struggling financially, relying on temporary jobs until he eventually secured a position in an office. Jean was accused of kidnapping women, theft, and fraud. As a result, the media reported extensively on the investigation, making the details of the case public. Journalists were especially interested because Geraldine is a famous media personality and the daughter of a famous actor. They shared various details about Geraldine's life, attempting to highlight her alleged close relationship with Jean. On December 6, a neighbor of Jean provided new information to the investigators. He reported that on the evening of November 1, he observed Jean working diligently in his garden. The neighbor noted that Jean spent several consecutive days, from November 1st to November 5, engaged in various gardening activities, which he found unusual. He witnessed Jean trimming bushes, removing stumps, and burning debris. This behavior aroused suspicion, leading investigators to search Jean's parents' plots to find the bodies of Katia and Geraldine, along with evidence. On the morning of December 8, 2004, several police vehicles appeared and blocked off the area to conduct a search. Specially trained police dogs also joined the operation. Officers conducted a thorough search of the property and discovered a freshly dug hole resembling a grave. To investigate, they dug approximately half a meter deep until they encountered a tree root. Although the hole was ultimately empty, it appeared to have been prepared for some purpose, likely to conceal bodies. Additionally, the extinguished fire revealed many burned items, including pieces of a mobile phone, scraps of women's clothing, a watch strap, several perfume bottles, and keys. These items were consistent with those belonging to Geraldine. In the barn, they also found an unusual elephant-shaped keychain that Geraldine always kept with her. This evidence linked Jean to the deaths of Katia and Geraldine. To ensure reliable information, it is important to locate the bodies of Katia and Geraldine. The following day, the police continued their search and found a cesspool in the area. They discovered 2 naked bodies, but extracting them proved difficult because they were mostly submerged in sewage, and there was limited space to work. Special equipment was brought in for the extraction process, which took nearly all night. The bodies were identified as Geraldine Giraud and Katia L'Herbier. Detectives quickly observed that their mouths had been stuffed with objects and gagged with duct tape, while their faces were covered with what appeared to be death masks. Jean, the main suspect, requested a lawyer and denied any wrongdoing. He claimed that he did not know how Katia and Geraldine died. However, the prosecutor's office disagreed, believing Jean was either responsible for the double murder or complicit in a horrific crime. After the bodies were found, he changed his story, claiming that Geraldine and Katia had indeed visited him, but were later taken away by 2 men dressed in black. He alleged that the men were involved in a furniture transfer at a bar in Paris, and that he had seen Katia and Geraldine with them before disappearing. The detectives decide to team up with Jean and ask him to create a composite sketch of the individuals dressed in black. In February 2005, he created 2 photographs. Unfortunately, no one was able to identify the individuals in the sketches, rendering them ineffective. By this time, the autopsy results of Katia and Geraldine were available. Due to the poor condition of the bodies, the forensic expert could not determine the exact cause of death. Possible injuries, such as weapon or knife wounds, as well as signs of strangulation, remain inconclusive. The condition of their lungs raised many questions, with suspicions that they may have been poisoned with some kind of gas. The estimated time of death corresponds to the time they went missing. However, the poor state of the bodies made it challenging to pinpoint an exact date. They were likely killed on November 1st and may have been held captive for 2 days, possibly in Jean's house, before he dealt with them. There is no evidence to confirm that he kept them imprisoned in his house. However, his mobile phone provided a clue. He activated it on November 2nd in the hospital parking lot area in Paris, where Geraldine's car was subsequently found. During a thorough search of Jean's home, police discovered a weapon and duct tape similar to the one used to wrap Katia and Geraldine's faces. However, the weapon was not the murder weapon. The investigation shifted back to the theory of gas poisoning. Their underwear was found in Jean's house, and his DNA was discovered on that underwear. Additionally, investigators believe he may have poisoned them with gas or some other poison. Another theory suggested that he could have used a type of food that, if inhaled over an extended period, could also lead to the deaths of Geraldine and Katia. However, Jean's defense team questioned the police's theories. They argued that if he had really killed Katia and Geraldine, he would not have dumped their bodies on his land. Given his familiarity with the surrounding forest, he could have easily hidden them, making it risky to leave the bodies in a place associated with him. Additionally, they found the proposed financial motive to be unlikely. Jean used only a small fraction of the large sum of money on Katia and Geraldine's credit cards. His family also found it hard to believe that he was involved in the murder. However, the prosecutor's office argued that there was a financial motive behind the crimes. By November 2004, he was struggling financially, earning just over $900 a month, barely enough to cover basic needs. He is in dire need of money and sees Katia and Geraldine as potential solutions. When police searched the storage room at his parents' home, they found tape that matched the tape used to wrap Katia and Geraldine's heads. They also discovered a hair on the tape that was believed to be similar to Geraldine's hair. The lawyer objected to this evidence, arguing that the police had only found hair without the necessary follicles for accurate DNA matching, meaning it was impossible to confirm its source. The prosecution faced several troubling questions. On November 26, 2004, an opportunity arose to shed light on these issues. When police arrested Patricia Darboux, Jean's girlfriend, they frequently called and contacted each other. He met Patricia in 2003 and became her friend first, and then her boyfriend. Over time, they spent a lot of time together and began to communicate regularly. During this period, he was financially stable, working as a forester and supporting a family. However, he later attempted to involve Patricia in financial fraud related to illegal activities, specifically the trade of contraband cigarettes. The police discovered that this seemingly modest and honest man had connections to organized crime. He is particularly interested in stolen credit card dealers. Patricia admitted that she got into trouble because of one of his schemes, but he helped her avoid serious consequences. Patricia's testimony revealed that Jean had long-standing ties to the criminal underworld, contradicting claims that he was an innocent man who had recently fallen into a life of crime. In this context, Jean's account is unreliable. He later alleged that he tried to cooperate with Katia and Geraldine in some scheme, but things did not go as planned. The police decided to investigate people close to Jean to gather more information. This investigation lasted for more than 4 years, and they discovered that many of his friends and acquaintances were petty criminals, mainly involved in theft, kidnapping, and fraud. However, none of these individuals knew Katia and Geraldine. It seems that Jean needed help to kill Katia and Geraldine, as it seems he could not do it himself. Eventually, the detectives turned their attention to Geraldine's aunt, Marie Christine van Kempen, who introduced Katia to Geraldine. Marie was a singer, artist, and voice teacher. At the funeral, Marie acted strangely. Her inconsistent statements to police raised suspicions, as she changed her mind several times. This led to a theory that she might have had a motive for the murders. Perhaps she had a big argument with Katya and Geraldine, which may have caused her to contact Jean for help. Alternatively, there might have been another motive linked to a troubling incident from her past. As a teenager, Marie tried to convince Geraldine that her father had abused her, but this was not true. Geraldine denied this and told her father that Marie had made her say these false things. The reasons behind Marie's actions remain unclear. Marie was later arrested on suspicion of being involved in a murder. Further searches of Marie's home uncovered numerous recordings, leading investigators to suspect that she had a complicated relationship with Geraldine. This raised questions about whether that relationship may have motivated her actions. They also found masks and tape similar to those used to cover Katya and Geraldine's mouths. In particular, there were traces of chloroform on some of the masks. However, her family insists that she is incapable of murder. They believe that the strained relationship between Marie and Katya, Geraldine, stems from each person's personal habits, which make communication difficult. After spending 31 hours in police custody, Marie was released after convincingly explaining the suspicious evidence to the police. A witness also emerged to corroborate her account. They discovered that the chloroform on the masks was actually residue from insecticides left by the apartment's previous owner. As a result, all suspicions against Marie were cleared. Although the prosecutor's office had little evidence against Jean, after 4 years of investigation, the grand jury decided to proceed with trial. The evidence presented by the prosecution faced strong opposition during the preliminary hearings. The judge scheduled the trial for the end of 2009. However, just before the first official hearing in September 2009, Jean escaped from prison. This escape aligned with the profile suggested by psychiatrists, indicating that it was more calculated than the detectives had realized. A week after his escape, he wrote to a close friend, asserting his innocence and claiming that he had been wrongfully imprisoned. He portrayed himself as a victim of a conspiracy, convinced that the actual killers were trying to frame him. In another letter, he described his life in the forest as difficult, but still better than being imprisoned on false charges. For 5 weeks, Jean evaded the entire French police force in a dramatic chase. Finally, a surveillance camera captured his image on a street. Unfortunately for law enforcement, by the time they arrived, he had already escaped again. It was later revealed that he was not living in the forest as he had claimed. Instead, he was staying in the apartment of a friend who was away and unaware of his presence. On November 20, 2009, he was arrested, but after returning to prison, he began to complain again. On February 20, 2010, Jean was found dead in prison. This incident caused further grief to Katya and Geraldine's family, as his death prevented them from learning the truth about Katya and Geraldine's deaths. He has always maintained his innocence, but has tried every way to avoid facing the jury, prosecutors, and judge. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Christina Woods. Christina was born on August 19, 1989 in South Bend, Indiana, USA. Her mother, Mary, was only 18 years old when she gave birth to her. Christina was the first child in the family and later had 2 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers, forming a large family. From a young age, she dreamed of an ideal married life and having many children. However, during her elementary school years, family problems began to arise, ultimately leading to her father's departure. Christina wanted to avoid the mistakes of her parents and build a complete family, but during her school years, she realized the difficulties and realities of adult life. Christina then met an older man and became pregnant, even though she was very young. She decided to keep the baby, and when she was 16 years old, she gave birth. Unfortunately, the father of the baby was a terrible parent because he abandoned her and the baby. Her mother's life was similar. Her father also abandoned the family. Witnessing her mother's struggles and sacrifices made Christina realize how challenging her own situation would be. Despite facing challenges, Christina was determined to be a good mother, and her relatives believed she succeeded, especially considering her young age. At 17 years old, she met Troy, a 30-year-old man who worked at a store near her home. Although she had always liked older men, the age difference made Troy seem very mature. Despite her mother's warnings about the age gap, they connected and began dating. Their relationship deepened, and they married on November 14, 2007, when Christina turned 18. A year later, she became pregnant again. Tragically, on April 21, 2009, Christina experienced her first heartbreak when her daughter, Lillian, passed away due to health complications. During this difficult time, she sought comfort from Troy, but found it hard to connect with him. He was emotionally distant and held conservative views. Ultimately, Christina had 4 children in total: Haley, Sierra, Kira, and Anthony. Friends and family describe her as friendly and cheerful. In contrast, her husband Troy wanted to control every aspect of their lives. He expected Christina to stay at home and manage household chores, but as a young woman, she was not ready for that. She wanted to enjoy life, spend time with friends, attend parties, and escape from constant control. Troy tried to force her into a routine but failed, which frustrated him and led to many arguments. He often lashed out at her, humiliating her over minor issues. One night, during an unexpected conflict, he assaulted her for the first time. Unable to endure the abuse, she reported him to the police. When officers arrived, Troy tried to blame her for the situation, but his excuses fell flat. She had visible injuries, which led to his arrest. Christina decided to break up with Troy, but this choice caused more controversy. After his release from jail, his behavior became erratic. He stalked her and issued threats whenever they crossed paths in public. To protect herself, she sought a restraining order against him. Despite this, he repeatedly violated the order and faced multiple arrests, but he did not face any serious consequences for his actions. In the fall of 2017, Christina was diagnosed with cancer. Fortunately, the disease was caught early enough that surgery could have saved her. However, after the surgery, she had to rest in bed. During this time, Troy began to show renewed interest in Christina. He wants to reconcile and live as a family again, but she makes it clear that she only sees him as the father of her children. She wanted him to bond with the kids, but didn't want to rekindle their relationship. While recovering from surgery at home, Christina received frequent visits from family and friends, especially her mother and her 2 best friends, Gina and Brooke. Brooke often came over with her husband, Daniel Lynn. She and Brooke were childhood friends, growing up together and being as close as family. One evening, Christina's mother, Mary, came to look after her daughter and planned to stay overnight. To her surprise, she found Daniel there. Initially, she thought nothing of it. However, as the night went on, his behavior became increasingly odd. First, Brooke wasn't there. Second, Daniel didn't leave even after Mary offered to take care of Christina and told him he could go home. He ended up staying all night, proving that this was more than just a casual visit. The next morning, Mary ran into Brooke, who expressed concern about Daniel's behavior. Mary asked why he visited Christina when she was away, and why he stayed overnight. She was surprised and had no answer, as she had no idea what was going on. She was devastated when she discovered that her husband, Daniel, had been having an affair with her best friend Christina for a long time. Feeling betrayed and unhappy, she went straight to confront Christina. She felt deceived not only by her husband, but also by someone she considered a close friend, someone she had grown up with. When Brooke confronted Christina, a heated argument ensued. Christina admitted that for the past 10 years, she and Brooke's husband Daniel had been secretly involved while pretending to be just friends. They had been enjoying their affair without any intention of ending it. This revelation infuriated Brooke. Meanwhile, Christina's ex-husband Troy learned about the situation. He realized that their marriage had been built on betrayal, as Christina had also cheated on him. Seizing the opportunity, he decided to fight for full custody of their children, claiming he was concerned for their well-being due to Christina's irresponsible behavior. However, her family and friends believed that Troy's real purpose in seeking custody was to hurt her as much as possible. Despite this, Daniel's relationships with both Brooke and Christina continued, creating a complicated love triangle. Daniel alternated between living with Brooke and Christina, often choosing one woman while arguing with the other. Both women were aware of this situation but chose to tolerate it, and neither was willing to end the cycle. This led to tensions between them, resulting in constant arguments and even physical fights. In May 2018, Daniel spent time with Christina again. She urged him to leave Brooke for her, but this discussion was starting to frustrate him. Their conversation turned into another argument, which escalated into violence, leaving Christina injured and hospitalized. Despite this incident, she did not end her relationship with Daniel, seemingly holding on to hope for a future with him, even though he was married to her friend Brooke. During this time, Christina was in regular contact with her ex-husband Troy, who was determined to gain full custody of their children. Their relationship seemed to improve, but he remained focused on gaining more custody of the children. She felt relieved to have the chance to take her mind off the complications of her love life and spend quality time with her children. On June 9, 2018, Christina attended a job interview in hopes of finding a job and improving her financial situation. Although she still relied on Troy and her family for support, she understood that this reliance couldn't last forever. It was crucial for her to regain her independence and achieve career success to ensure a stable future for herself and her children. After the interview, Christina called her mother, Mary, to share the good news that she had passed the interview and got the job. While driving, she mentioned that she would call her mother again once she got home. She wanted to discuss plans for a celebration with her mother and sister. The drive would take her about 15 to 20 minutes. Her mother was thrilled and eagerly awaited the call. However, an hour passed, and Christina still hadn't called, which made her mother anxious. She tried to distract herself with work, but she felt uneasy, as this was unlike Christina. Mary decided to call Christina, but she didn't answer. Mary then sent text messages and tried to contact her daughter through various messaging apps, but she did not respond. Throughout the day, she tried to contact her daughter. By evening, she felt compelled to contact the police. Unfortunately, they informed her that not enough time had passed to consider Christina a missing person. Because she was an adult, she had the right to leave without reporting it. The police advised her to wait another day. Mary then went to Christina's house to check, but found no sign of her or the children. It seems she hasn't come home yet, and the kids are with their father, Troy. This situation made Mary more worried, but she decided to wait until the next day, hoping that things would become clearer. The following day, Mary still couldn't reach her daughter and decided to contact the police to report her missing. This time, the police took her report seriously without hesitation. The situation was becoming very serious because Christina was a responsible mother with 4 children. She was expected to keep in touch with and care for her children. The strangest thing was that a court hearing was scheduled for June 12, 2018, where custody between Christina and Troy would be decided. However, she did not appear at the hearing, and Troy had to go to court alone. On that same day, Christina's stepfather received a strange message from her. She mentioned having problems and needing help, asking him to come get her. However, 2 hours later, her stepfather received another message from her, saying she was okay and instructing him not to tell her mother, Mary. At that moment, her relatives were finally convinced that something bad had happened to her. During this time, the police were actively searching for Christina, hoping she would show up in court. However, suspicions grew that she was a victim of a crime, as no traces of her could be found. The police began to investigate the complex details of her life and relationships. From the beginning, her ex-husband Troy was the prime suspect, as they often had conflicts. They were in a serious custody dispute, giving him a strong motive to harm her. Despite this, Troy was one of the few who cooperated with the investigation. Meanwhile, neither Brooke nor Daniel was interested in finding Christina, which made people suspicious of them. Eventually, it was established that Troy was not involved. He had an alibi, confirmed by several witnesses at the time of Christina's disappearance. He had been with the children and appeared genuinely worried about Christina's situation. Despite their disagreements, Troy did not want the children to grow up without their mother. He was more focused on gaining full custody because Christina's life was chaotic, and he wanted to protect the children from that instability. The second suspect is Daniel Lynn, Brooke's husband. Daniel owned a house in St. Louis County, Minnesota. Investigators analyzed Christina's phone data and discovered that this house was the last place she had visited. It is worth noting that the house had been abandoned for 5 years, and Daniel rarely maintained it. Detectives then went to investigate the area for any sign of Christina. At first, the house seemed normal, befitting its abandoned state. Despite the house being vacant for years, there was a strong scent of cleaning products wafting in from a slightly open window, suggesting recent use. On the kitchen table, they found gloves commonly used for cleaning. Neighbors reported unusual activity around the house, stating that several cars had been parked there from June 11 to June 15. Investigators later also looked at Daniel's recent bank transactions. They found that shortly before Christina went missing, he bought a significant amount of cleaning products and protective gear similar to what was found in the house at a local hardware store. They asked to see the video from the surveillance camera. On that day, Daniel was not shopping alone. Brooke was with him, and both appeared tense. The store clerk who assisted them confirmed this. He noticed Daniel trying to contain his anxiety, with a distracted look in his eyes, while Brooke looked very uneasy. Shortly after, the detectives noticed a large fire pit on Daniel's land, where they discovered several items that had been partially burned by the fire. Among these were fragments of a mobile phone, a bracelet, a button from a pair of jeans, and several other melted items that had an inscription from an amusement park. This was the same park where Christina had spent time with Troy and the children shortly before she went missing. Troy confirmed that all of these items could have been burned. This coincidence cannot be just a coincidence, however. The information needs to be verified. On July 2, 2018, 24 days after Christina went missing, the police conducted a thorough search of the area around Daniel's house. They searched nearly every inch of the area and then discovered a fresh grave. As they dug deeper, they found Christina's body. After conducting an autopsy, experts confirmed that she had been beaten for an extended period and had suffered severe injuries. However, the cause of death was determined to be strangulation. Subsequently, detectives sought an arrest warrant for 40-year-old Daniel Lynn. However, he was not planning to surrender and went into hiding, leaving no clues about his location. Meanwhile, the police tried to locate Brooke and discovered that she had also disappeared. That evening, an anonymous witness contacted the police and reported that Daniel had gone to a trailer park several hundred miles from his home. The witness also indicated that Daniel had likely harmed Christina, as he had confessed to doing so. When the police arrived at the trailer park, Daniel and Brooke had disappeared again. Local residents confirmed that they had been there and pointed out the trailer they used. Detectives later found a receipt from a gas station a few miles away in a trash bin. CCTV footage showed them entering the store together, holding hands. This clearly indicated that Brooke was not a victim of kidnapping. She had been with Daniel willingly. On July 3, 2018, Brooke suddenly appeared and was immediately arrested and taken to the police station. She reported that Daniel had called her earlier that day, the day Christina went missing. He asked her to bring tools and some items from their home, saying that their family farm was flooded and needed repairs. When Brooke brought the items to him, she found Christina there. Brooke admitted that Christina and Daniel had argued, which led to a fight. She said that she just stood by and watched without trying to intervene. In a fit of rage, he hit Christina so hard that she fell and lost consciousness. He then took Brooke outside and returned to the house with a shovel. Brooke went to the car and waited for him to return. When Daniel finally came back, he appeared out of breath and covered in dirt. Brooke maintains that she had nothing to do with Christina's death, but believes that Daniel killed and buried Christina on their land. However, she could not specify the exact location, claiming she did not witness the events. Brooke mentioned that she had not seen Daniel since that day and was unaware of his current whereabouts. The detectives did not inform her that Christina's body had already been discovered. Instead, they hoped to catch her in a lie or find inconsistencies in her story, but there were very few. After that, they sent her home, but asked her to contact the police if she learned anything new about Christina. However, they began to closely monitor her movements and noticed that she frequently visited a trailer park where her parents owned a small house. Although Brooke had previously claimed she didn't know Daniel's whereabouts, surveillance footage showed them together at a gas station, suggesting they had run away together. It's possible they later separated. The detectives decided to verify her story when she returned to the trailer park. Brooke was already there when they arrived. They entered the trailer and found Daniel inside. Both immediately refused to answer questions and requested a lawyer. There was no resistance, and they were subsequently arrested. Many questions arose regarding Brooke's possible involvement in the murder. While Daniel's DNA was found on Christina's body, this does not necessarily mean he acted alone. His wife, Brooke, may also have played a role in attacking Christina, disposing of the body, and cleaning up the crime scene to the point of leaving no evidence. According to Brooke, Daniel and Christina's relationship was complicated, and he often treated her badly. Despite this, Christina forgave him repeatedly due to her strong feelings for him. She often expressed that she felt like part of his family and was reluctant to end their relationship. Christina believes that once she becomes financially independent, she can work through her issues with Troy and improve her relationship with Daniel. Unfortunately, her hopes never came true, eventually leading to her tragic murder. Daniel and Brooke were questioned. Brooke claimed that Christina had provoked the aggression, as she always did, which made it difficult for Daniel to control himself. However, he refused to cooperate with the investigation. His lawyer argued that the prosecutor's office lacked sufficient evidence to press charges, but this was incorrect. Daniel Lynn was held on $1 million bail, which he was unable to pay, forcing him to remain in jail. To avoid severe punishment, he agreed to cooperate with the prosecution. He confessed to second-degree murder, which carries a maximum sentence of 40 years. As a result of the plea deal, he received a 16-year prison term. Brooke pleaded guilty to assisting Daniel, which allowed her to avoid a jury trial. Christina's mother and those who cared about her were shocked to learn that Brooke was sentenced to only 1 year in prison. Brooke admitted to witnessing the abuse of her best friend Christina without intervening. However, the prosecutor's office could not find enough evidence to charge her with a crime. After serving her sentence, Brooke continued her relationship with Daniel. Christina's family was outraged. Even her ex-husband Troy criticized the leniency of the sentence, but they were unable to have the court's decision overturned. They had to accept the outcome. Although Christina lost custody of her 4 children, her eldest daughter Haley, who was 15 at the time, was allowed to live with her maternal grandmother, while the other 3 children went to live with their father. In an interview after the trial, Christina's mother expressed her desire for her daughter to be remembered not as a victim of crime or violence, but as a loving mother, daughter, and sister. She tried to persuade the court to reconsider the case and increase the sentence, but her efforts were unsuccessful.